I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. We have a full house. I'd like to report that the board met in executive session earlier tonight to discuss matters of personnel and legal. And then we'll get right underway with our report from students. Welcome. I'm so sorry. Yes, we are going to start with a moment of silence. The Radnor High School lost a really beloved teacher this past week, Nicole Obensky, and we are going to take a moment of silence just to recognize her passing. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to have the students come forward. Patty, thank you for reminding me. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. After missing last month for our soccer game, we have plenty to fill you in on. I guess since we had to miss our presenting for our game, I should probably fill you in on how our game played out. On that very cold, rainy Tuesday, we drove nearly an hour to Neshaminy High School. After playing through all of regulation time on a puddled grass fields, the ref deemed the field no longer playable. We were currently tied, so this meant we would all pile back on the bus to drive back the next day and finish the overtime segments. The Neshaminy field was still covered in water, so we had to play at their neighboring high school's turf field. After fighting through 2 overtimes, we were still tied. 5 penalty kicks were taken by each team, and we were still tied. A 6th penalty kick was taken, and we were still tied. But on the 7th penalty kick, the Neshaminy goalie made an incredible save, advancing Neshaminy and sending Radnor home. It was a disappointing loss for RGS, but it was an accomplishment in itself to have hung with a team ranked so much higher than us. Emily Diudolo, a sophomore, was our MVP this season and was also named first team All-Central League. The boys soccer team suffered a crushing defeat from Central Bucks West, cutting the season in the gents shorter than expected. Senior Bobby Hydrisco and junior Peter Vitale led the team with 5 goals each. Bobby Hydrisco and Jake Lee were also named first team All-Central League. Field hockey ended their season in 2nd place in the Central League with a 15-2 record. Seniors Bridget Lowry, Maggie Rozoff, and Haley Kemp led the team with 10 goals each. Finally, football, led by Sam DeLella, Jameer Dixon, Brendan Serbach, and Taylor Malgrolis, finished their season 5-5. On November 13th, 23 Radnor student-athletes signed their national letters of intent to top schools, including Johns Hopkins, Princeton, Duke, Penn, Georgetown, and Notre Dame, just to name a few. These students have worked hard both in perfecting their sport and in the classroom, and it has paid off. Yesterday, winter sports kicked off their season. Track was outside despite the cold weather, swimmers plunged into the pool, and basketball players began their grueling week of tryouts. There are some promising seasons for each of these teams.
This Wednesday, during community period, representatives from the student body will help the freshmen to understand the honor code. As a follow-up, we will be holding a brown-bagged lunch in early December where students can come to offer advice to teachers about effective ways to limit cheating and plagiarism in their classrooms. Next, National Honor Society held its induction last month and is now beginning to coordinate its annual canned food drive to deliver these goods to a local church. Students in NHS are currently working hard at their community service hours. On Veterans Day, the high school held a ceremony where we honored some of our local veterans. Mrs. Kevgis spoke about each veteran and thanked them for their service. Afterwards, students who wrote exemplary poems about Veterans Day were recognized and given a prize. Last week, as Avery mentioned, the high school held its signing day, where 23 seniors, officially signed their letters of intent to whichever school they were going to continue their academic and athletic careers. There were a total of 23, including, I have broken down for you, 14 lacrosse, 4 field hockey, 1 golf, 1 swimming, 1 soccer, 1 track, and 1 football. Using Radnor as our foundation, we are certain these students will continue to achieve great things. Also in the past month, underclassmen took their PSATs while seniors had a fun breakfast in the cafeteria. Afterwards, seniors took their class picture and then all students resumed the remainder of the school day. In other news, recent community periods have been put to use as students were recently asked to complete a survey about drug use, family life, and other topics. Students also attended an informative assembly on vaping where we were spoken to about the extremely harmful nature of that particular addiction. I'd like to thank you all again for having us, especially as my time as school board rep is coming to a close soon, and we look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank you, ladies, and congratulations on that hard-fought game. All righty. Let's see. We're going to have our report from Superintendent, Mr. Batchelor.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Good to see everyone here. We have a lot of recognitions tonight, and we have a very full agenda with a presentation. So just quickly, all I have is want to just list upcoming events. We've posted those for board members as we enter, as we get ready for December. November is flying by, but just wanted to share those events, and also just wanted to note, again, our thank you to our donations. We again appreciate all those who support our district. Without those donations, together we couldn't provide the education we provide. So I just want to thank the donations that we received this month, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move right into our recognitions, starting first off with Mrs. Bohnenberger to do a presentation, a recognition to our young ladies from girls tennis.
Ladies, there are just two of you. Do you want to come up here and stand next to me? Hello. Okay. So Radnor High School seniors, Kanon Ciarrocchi and Lucy Hederick, they took home the 2019 PIAA District 1 Class AAA Doubles Championship in girls tennis with a win over Conestoga's Lena Kwok and Olivia Dodge on October 23rd. The district title adds to a string of accolades for the duo this season, which include being a part of a team that won the Central League title and earning the Central League's doubles championship. Kanon and Lucy went on to compete in the PIAA state tournament where they finished second. Ladies, the superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, we congratulate you and your parents and your coaches on this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
Okay, great. Now we'll have Mrs. Solomon to do a presentation to Parker Bruhns, People's Choice winner.
Parker, you want to come on up? Now you can just stand here and enjoy being in the spotlight. Radnor High School ninth grader Parker Bruhns was named a People's Choice winner at the Young Entrepreneurs Academy's 11th Annual Saunders Scholarship National Conference and Competition this past May for his business, Tech Gloves, with his partner Lawson Miller of the St. Norbert School. The Young Entrepreneurs Academy, I love this, YEA, Y-E-A, is a program that aims to transform local middle and high school students into confident entrepreneurs. Through the year-long program, students in grades 6 through 12 generate business ideas, conduct market research, write business plans, pitch to a panel of investors, and launch their very own companies. Parker was one of 13 students selected to participate in the Philadelphia program during the 2018-19 school year and graduated from the academy on May 22nd at Cabrini University. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulates Parker, his parents, and his teachers on this outstanding accomplishment. Talk to the board members.
Congratulations, Parker.
There you go. Okay, great. Now, moving right along, we have a representative from PSBA, that's the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, here to present the 2019 Honor Roll of School Board Service Awards. Do you have something to read, or do you want me to read our little blurb?
I was just going to say a few words, but you are welcome.
So let me read this, and then we'll have, I'm sorry, we have Ms. Zuvich? Zuvich, great. So PSBA has been honoring long-term school directors for their volunteer service to their local communities through the Honor Roll School Board Service Program for nearly 35 years. School directors are recognized with an Honor Roll certificate when they reach 8 years of service, and again every 4 years thereafter. When school board members reach the milestone of 24 years of service, they begin to receive plaques to honor their service at the milestone, and every 4 years after that. A representative tonight, Ms. Zuvich, is here to present a certificate for 12 years of service to Patricia Booker and a plaque to Chuck Madden for 24 years of service.
I just want to say thank you to all of you. You guys all do a great job. You donate all your time, and we greatly appreciate it. Patricia for your 12 years and Chuck for your 24. I was fortunate enough to meet Chuck 3 years ago, a little bit better. He comes to our conferences and our advocacy day, but he did help us kick off our ambassador program, and I really enjoyed working with him, so thank you both.
The both of you go on down. "24 years gets a standing O." Okay, well, don't get too comfortable sitting back down, because right now what we'd like to do is move into our next recognition, which is a recognition of service for school board members Julia Bohnenberger, Patricia Booker, Chuck Madden, and Michael Miller. Mr. Batchel, if you want to go down and call down the 4 school board members. Yes, please, if you would all go join Ken. Yes, Mike, you have to get out of your seat. You have to go back down there, Chuck. All righty. So, on behalf of the entire Radnor School District community, the school board would like to recognize the service of Julia Bohnenberger, Patricia Booker, Chuck Madden, I know it says Charles, but he's always going to be Chuck, and Michael Miller. Collectively, their time on the board represents 42 years of service and dedication to the Radnor community. During this time on the board, they have faithfully and diligently used their best efforts to further the cause of sound educational principles and practices in the Radnor Township School District. Each one of them brought a dedication and commitment to education, a high degree of insight and judgment, and a cooperative and contributive spirit. It is with sincere gratitude and appreciation we thank each of these 4 board members for their leadership and commitment to improving the lives of countless Radnor students. Ken, do you want to say a few words?
Just, yeah,
there you go.
You know I'm going to say a few words before you sit down. Is this ticking? Yes, it is. It's ticking. But it won't go off until after this board meeting, so you got to stay. I think Susan said it so well, but I just can't thank you enough. Thank you for your dedication to the Radnor community. As Susan mentioned, 42 years collectively with all of them. I thought about doing research on each committee they all served on, and then I hit Chuck, and I realized I couldn't go back that far to find all the information on all the committees. But you all have served so well. You have been passionate and dedicated to the students of Radnor to ensure that our students in this community would receive the best education, the best support, and that all of you collectively have brought that dedication each and every month, every Tuesday night, and you get your Tuesdays back now. That's the big change. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for your service.
Actually,
So Chuck always likes, whenever someone comes up, receives an award, he always then looks at the person and says, would you like to say something?
That's exactly right.
So,
I would. First of all, I had a great time here at Radnor. And I look forward to my retirement. Normally, people that serve on the school board don't serve to the point where they feel as if they're leaving a job. But I think the school board is a job. And I want to thank all the people that supported me in the past for that. I've made so many good friends here throughout the years, teachers, administrators, students, board members, even occasional superintendent. But I would actually like to thank Judy Sherry, and I will tell you why. Judy Sherry, who was serving on the school board with me, introduced me to Linda Callio. And Linda Callio is the love of my life. And without her, I could not have pulled things together and come to meetings. She is an unbelievable influence, and when I would leave these meetings and didn't ask questions that she thought I should have asked, I would hear it when I would get home. Okay? So she is a very tough critic of what I should be doing, and the school board, you can't always do what you think is the right thing to do because we're a team up here. And I think that's the lesson that I would like to pass on, is we all have to focus on the students and our community. And that's what I think all of the people who are retiring or leaving the position have done since we've been on there. So, thank you.
I guess we'll go through the order of succession here. And partially some of Chuck's 24 years are my fault. Sorry, dude.
Yes, they are.
I know. Anyway, I had something that I wrote because I'm bad at, I'm not as good at just speaking at the microphone, so I'm going to read, if you don't mind. As I look back over my 12 years, there are a number of things that I'm proud that I have accomplished. Some are small, some are more lasting, and some seem so long ago. My first real assignment on the board was the formation and the leading of a Go Paperless committee back in 2007. The committee made up of teachers, staff, parents, and administrators. The original purpose was an effort to reduce the amount of time that our staff was spending copying and distributing announcements and other communications so that they could spend more time focused on the students. In the end, we saved much more than time. We saved the expense on paper, the cost of our printers, and it was way more than we could have imagined, and it started the wave towards electronic communication in the township, in the school district. With the support of my dear friend Susan Michelson, we drove significant change in the way the district reports our finances. Back when I got on this board, it was near impossible to follow the bouncing ball year to year. Every time I got a budget book, I had to spend hours, if not days, going back over the prior years to connect the dots. We pushed the then business manager to create a format of reporting that was transparent and included projections that could help the board make informed decisions. Michelle, when she came on board, improved that format further, even taking it as far as to show us where there were truly shortfalls at the start of our budgeting process, rather than burying it deep in the 300-plus page budget binder. I hope this transparency continues well past my time on the board, and I urge the remaining and new board members to take the time to understand the details in the budget. Don't just rely on the administration to make the decisions and rubber stamp as we've seen in the past. I'm proud of my part in the effort to strengthen the math and science programs, especially at the elementary school. Though we couldn't gain enough parent support to keep the Partners for STEM going longer than 2 years, I spent a lot of time with Kelly Murray and concerned parents and did what I could to push the adoption of a new math program and to address the weaknesses in our elementary school science program. There are so many other things, it's amazing that I was even able to get any work done, my real job. From sponsoring the creation of the Citizens Advisory Committee to pushing the elimination of half days in the school calendar. The 6+ years that I served in the Delaware County Intermediate Unit representing Radnor Township, including being the facilities chair, supporting the Aston facility overhaul. The annual crusade to save the Radnor Raider, that it does not disappear from our buildings, and that one I'm not giving up. You will see me at this podium regularly if the Raider disappears. And the one, and probably the most likely to last beyond my term on this board, and maybe the most important because of the safe passage of our students, was the effort to get the traffic light added at Radnor Chester Road at the entrance to the high school. I've learned a lot over these 12 years. I learned how to present ideas in ways that could gain buy-in and support. I learned how to negotiate. I learned how to interview employees. I learned how to work with desperate ideas and find ways to build consensus. I learned how to stick up for what I believed was right. I learned how to protect myself when people said mean and untrue things about me. As board president, I learned how to collaborate and respect everyone for his or her own opinions and contributions, and I learned how to be resilient. And all of these things surely helped me when I went back to work after 8 years of being a stay-at-home mom and a community volunteer. And I believe much of what I learned gave me the experience needed to rise to being the Vice President of Engineering for a global technology company. I appreciate the journey, I appreciate the experience, I appreciate the relationships, and I most of all appreciate getting my Tuesday and Wednesday nights back. I wish you all the best of luck.
Over the past 4 years, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful for the support from the community and the staff, especially those who went out of their ways to help me to make this job a little easier for me. Even the smallest words of encouragement went a long way, and you all know who you are, and I thank you. I'm most appreciative for my husband and my 3 daughters. They let me sacrifice a lot of time that could have gone to them, and the flexibility in our home life that they afforded me, and their willingness to let me take this position. And it put them at a higher level of scrutiny and exposure, and that's a lot for children, and they did not ask for it. And they handled it with a lot of grace, and I'm in awe of their bravery and their morals, and please never stop being you. I also have special thanks for Linda Stein, who is a reporter at the Mainline Media News, for her tireless reporting on school board activities. You may notice that she is no longer here because she is stretched so thinly, she has to watch our board meetings on video. So, Linda, I salute you and your work for the community. I asked Radnor to please visit her website every day to read her news, keep it current, because without them, you're really not going to know what's going on in this district and in this township, and it's all we have left. Beyond that, there are a lot of statements I could make at this time, a lot of different directions I could take, and I'm going to be the most constructive, and I'm going to offer some advice to some incoming board members. I know a few of you are here tonight. One, I want to explain, you all need to know this, you'll find out through your training, that the school board meetings are our business meetings, and they are designed to be conducted in the public for the sake of transparency. This is not a place to make speeches. If you find yourself every month writing out a speech and coming up to the podium, you're doing it wrong. Rethink it. This is not the place for you to give thanks excessively to the community or staff. It's not an awards banquet. You're not receiving an award. This is just us doing our business, and keep that in mind. Also, and this is very important, part of the law that goes into the Sunshine Act is to make sure that our deliberations are transparent. And we have to have, whenever we have a meeting of at least 5 people, we have to be in a public meeting. We can play games with that and say, okay, well, there's only 4 people in this meeting, or hey, we'll caucus, and that is defying the spirit of this meeting, and people want to hear your deliberations. So if you're ever asked to caucus, if you're ever asked to, come into a room and then one person leaves. I beg you, please don't do that. Please be ethical. 2, do not fear communicating with Radnor residents. You represent them all, regardless of whether or not they came out to vote, whether or not they voted for you. You represent them. And you're going to hear a lot about how we're supposed to function as one. But do not mistake this as a monolithic wall of silence. To be clear, unless you are the president, you do not speak for the board. But you always speak for yourself. And if any constituent reaches out to you by email or by phone, please, he or she deserves a meaningful response every single time. Please respond to them meaningfully every time. 3, Radnor residents are entitled by law to come up here and speak at the podium. It's also part of the law that they are able to participate in the meeting. Now, I advise you to please pay attention respectfully. If you come up here and people see a smirk on your face, you're talking to your partner, you're laughing, you're getting up and walking around the room, that's not respectful. It looks bad. It's a bad look. Please remember humility and that you were elected here, and think about how it looks to everyone else. 4, it's a high honor to be invited to attend graduation ceremonies and to sit on that stage. Please accept every time you're invited. Please go up there with your camera in hand and take as many pictures as you can. That is an honor, and it is a pleasure, and to be able to give that to your friends, it is a great pleasure, and I think you will enjoy being able to do that. Finally, find your true north. For me, this is the true north that I use that guides me. It is a quote from William Penn, and I use it all the time. Right is right, even if everyone is against it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it. And making decisions based on that is not always easy, believe me, but it's essential to keeping yourself, respecting yourself, and being true to yourself. That's all I have. I'm done. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, let's not get into genders here.
now, I've got problems with all of you, and you're going to hear about it. I was kidding. I really wasn't planning on speaking tonight, or else I would have written it down and read it from up there like a game show host, like I usually do every month to entertain Todd's son, who watches on video. It is nice to see a lot of friends here, people that I know weren't here specifically for me, but I know the Brinks are here, my old swim coach is here. Not that you're old, but that was 20. My former coach, Mr. Robinson, that was over 25 years ago, back in the day. It's just seeing the Brinks reminds me of when my folks started in Radnor politics. I remember going over, or my dad coming to my house, and we would ride around the township with staple guns, putting paper posters on every telephone pole we could find, that kind of stuff, and then he'd have to do it again every time it rained. So that was a good time. But I just want to say it's been an honor serving on the school board. Both of my parents did it. I did it. I got elected when I was younger than my dad, and I lost election just like he did, but I was younger. So it's good to see you all. It was an honor to serve. Thank you all for doing it. And if anybody wants to know why I did it, blame those 2 women over there, Judge Karen, who dragged me into this with my wife, and then Karen abandoned us to become a judge. And then we found Special Master of Equitable Distribution in Chester County Family Court. It's a judge. And then we found Julia, so to fill in for her, who's filled in ably. But the real blame for all this falls with my wife and probably Mike McBride, because when I was a kid lifeguarding and Mike was managing the pool, we would talk about school boards being stupid and why don't you do this, and it's just so simple, just do this kind of thing, which served us both well negotiating a teacher's contract. So we were like, this is so simple, you just do this for 5 years. But just want to thank you all.
We start with Chuck, we end with Chuck.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things, because somebody was giving some advice. When I was first elected, my father told me 3 things to remember. One is be very careful that you do not catch Bruhns disorder, okay? Second one was swollen head disease. And the third one was never forget you're from peasant stock. Bruhns disorder is when you get elected, you want to build things so you see your name up in bronze. Okay, that's one you have to watch for. Don't build so you can see your name. Build for the proper reasons that we need to. swollen head disease is, before I was elected, I basically know the same thing the next day, but now oftentimes people that get elected know everything. And it doesn't happen that much on the school board because we are varied. But you just have to remember that. Now, as far as committees, I was actually on the Transportation Committee.
Wow.
Transportation Committee.
Horse and buggy?
Yep. And that only met for about a year. And also, Jules Prevost was my football coach.
Wow.
Just wanted to share that, and that's true.
I don't know if there's any board members who care to share. We've taken all this time to honor them, and now we're going to make them continue to work really hard tonight with our presentation.
Chuck and I are going to show you the Irish goodbye later.
There you go. Great. I do want to say it has been a really profound 4 years. I'm going to ignore Sarah and Andrew for a minute here. And the seven of us, we know how much work we put into good collegial efforts and a good collegial spirit. I will forever enjoy talking about finances and poker with Mike. And I can't imagine this board without hearing Chuck's stories, so you're still going to have to come around, Chuck, and share your thoughts. You know what, Patty, you and I will always have the utmost respect for your finances and your financial acumen. Even if I don't agree with it, I've always respected it. And Julia, a few minutes ago when you were sharing, you got really emotional, and I want you to know I've known that your 4 years on this board, your heart has always been in it about kids, and I want you to know that I know that. And I've just really enjoyed working with all of you. And we're going to continue to work for a few more hours tonight. I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to share, but if not, we can move into public comment. You look like you wanted to say something, Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Julia, Patty, Chuck, and Mike for being my colleagues over the past 4 years. And I think we often agreed individually and collectively, and sometimes we didn't. But I think we were always better off for the debates we had in terms of our growth and service as school directors. I know each of you has always cared passionately about enhancing our school district and serving our constituents, primarily our students. And again, I just want to thank you all. I know how many hours you've put into this alongside me and everybody else on this board. It is a big sacrifice. It takes a lot of time. And I want to thank you for that and for giving me the privilege of having worked with you for the past 4 years. I have learned a lot from each of you, and I can honestly say your contributions will be missed. And I want to thank you again for working with us for the past 4 years.
I ended up with the short microphone tonight. I do want to graciously thank all of you for your service to the community. I have to call out Chuck in particular because when I got on the board, Chuck was in a similar situation to me. He's also an educator, and he also worked at the DCIU. And so I learned from him how sort of to really balance those different roles to avoid any kind of conflict. So thank you for that, Mr. Madden. And Ms. Booker, we go way back. So Patty and I were the first year of Radnor Elementary School PTO. We go where our oldest children, she and I, our oldest children who are now 28, were in the first class at Radnor Elementary. So we have worked together for years for the betterment of this community, so I thank you for your time. Mr. Miller and Ms. Bohnenberger are newer to the board. I thank you for your dedication, Mike in particular, for your leadership on finance and negotiation. It's been very useful. Ms. Bohnenberger, for your passion for children. And so thank you all for for your service, really. Radnor's better for having all the different viewpoints represented and taking the time to sort out what's best from all those. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, we are going to walk into our public comment portion of the evening. Citizens are encouraged to address the board during public comment portions of the meeting on the agenda or other topics related to the Radnor Township School District. If you have not done so already, we ask that you print your name on the sign-in sheet that's at the back of the room. And when you come forward, if you would clearly state your name, your address, and your topic to be addressed. We do ask that individual comment be limited to not more than 4 minutes as per Board Policy 006. And should you be unable to attend tonight's meeting, you could submit your comments by email to boardcomments@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania. If there are questions this evening, the administration will review them, and the corresponding answers will be posted on the district's Board Docs website by the start of the first committee meetings for the following month. Do we have any public comment tonight? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Chris Henkel. I'm a senior at the high school. My address is 462 Barclay Road, Bryn Mawr. And me and my sister Lucy are here to talk about the infrastructure project. My family moved to Radnor in 1999 with my brother Ian, who was 6 months old at the time. I was born in 2002, and my twin brother and sister were born in 2004. By 2006, my brother Peter had been diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, a genetic disease that forced him to use a wheelchair to get around Radnor. But Pete was lucky. He went to a brand new Radnor Elementary School and a brand new Radnor Middle School. These schools, their driveways, their playgrounds, and their entries are all places that let him stay safe and connected with his friends. We knew that Radnor High School was going to be different for him. And from the moment my older brother Ian started attending events at RHS, we knew that this was not a place for Pete to safely visit, and we knew changes would need to be made to prepare for him to attend school here. We were confident. The school district had done a lot for Pete, very willingly, a lot for our family, and we were sure things would be okay. And the district knew that Peter was coming to the high school. Sadly, no changes have been made to improve accessibility since we first set foot on campus. Very few have been seriously considered until now. After Peter died, I became committed to making sure that changes did happen. These changes are needed to finally and dramatically improve the high school's campus's accessibility and safety. These changes are needed for all students, all future students, visitors, parents, and teachers who currently cannot access portions of the campus or are put in dangerous positions to attend campus events. Over the past 2 years, my sister, my father, and I have attended over 20 meetings of the school board and its facilities committee. We have participated in district-run open houses regarding needed improvements, and we have been invited to participate in the project steering committee. Importantly, we have participated in very difficult conversations about what can and can't be done and the limits of what is financially feasible. Today, I'm here in support of the infrastructure project as presented. It accomplishes the necessary accessibility improvements to finally make RHS a welcoming place to people with disabilities. But better than that, this project will demonstrate that Radnor High School is ready and waiting with open arms for the next Peter Henkel to join the student body. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm a sophomore at Radnor. I'm here with Chris, obviously. In honor of on behalf of my family and in honor of Pete, who would also be a sophomore right now. We are here in support of the infrastructure project. For my family, one of the most important and exciting things to understand is that we aren't talking about whether or not these improvements need to be made anymore, because we all know that they do now. And the facilities committee and the full board have listened and now know that these changes aren't things that people want, but they're necessary. In the past, there were improvements to drop-off areas for cars that could have included features for people with disabilities, but they didn't. And now we have the chance to do something about that. We have a plan that creates completely new and unrestricted ways for everyone to get around Radnor High School. This new plan lets people in wheelchairs get into the bleachers instead of having to sit separately like Pete did. And it lets people who are injured and on crutches take a ramp safely to and from working bathrooms and locker rooms. It will make it easier for visitors with canes or walkers to get from their cars to events at our school. And right now, there are way too many people who choose not to come to the high school to watch events because they can't, or they don't feel like dealing with the hassle of getting from their car to the fields. And parents pushing strollers, band members moving equipment, and students using fields will all be able to take a ramp, hold a railing, and maintain their footing with this new plan. So the new plan should change Radnor High School to a place that no one will avoid coming to, a place where everyone can come to no matter what. One of the things that Pete faced his whole life was the idea that if there was another way to get in, then it was okay. And a lot of the okay ways in were helpful, but they were further, took longer, needed someone to unlock a door, or just harder. But they were better than nothing. Radnor High School's accessibility should be not just better than nothing, and that's why this plan is so important. Because Pete and everyone else can always take the same ramp safely and together. It can now be a place where any student, teacher, coach, visitor, or ref will find a welcoming campus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lucy.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I want to begin to thank you, the superintendent, the administration, for the attention to the high school's athletic facilities.
May we have your name? I'm so sorry. If we could just have your name for the record.
My name is Melanie James Cosgrove.
Thank you.
So we all know it's long overdue, so thank you for that. I wrote this down in the hopes I'm going to stay in 4 minutes, so hence the prepared speech. My purpose tonight is to help inform the discussion around the high school's athletic facility enhancements proposed by the Breslin architects, particularly as they relate to the natatorium. Just a quick bit about me. I've lived in Radnor for the past 20 years. I've served I do serve on the Radnor High School Booster Swim Club board. I'm a parent of 2 Radnor High School swimmers. My oldest is a senior and actually just committed this past week to continue his swimming career at a D1 school. I also have a 10-year-old son who swims with the Radnor Aquatic Club. And on a personal note, my husband and I are both swimmers and both swam in high school and college, and I like to share the quick story that my husband and I first met at the Radnor High School swim pool. That's where we first met. While swimming at a Radnor Aquatic summer practice run by our Radnor High School icon, Henry Himmons, I don't know how many remember, but suffice it to say, we are not only familiar with swimming, but intimately familiar with the Radnor High School pool. Before responding specifically to the Breslin report, it's critical that I give you some context, which I will do very quickly. A reminder that our pool was built in 1971, 48 years ago, and has had no major upgrades since. Seating aside, it is the oldest athletic facility at Radnor High School. Utilization is massive at that pool, arguably more so than any other facility, athletic facility at the high school. And I'm speaking both daily and annually. We've actually put numbers together. I'm not going to go through all of them. I can happily share afterwards. But on a daily basis, it can be 550 to 600 swimmers a day utilizing that pool a day. 120 sophomore students on average per day swim. On physical ed classes, there's 4 a day. 60 high school swimmers and divers. 400 plus club swimmers come in for 4 or 5 different practices a day. And plus there's community swimming. On an annual basis, very quickly, we are proud to host every year the Central League Championships, which consists of at least 300 athletes who come to that pool 4 days in a row, and their spectators, which is over 300. We have about 10 or so high school swim meets with 600 plus athletes and their spectators, 150. We have Tom Robinson, who's here, started a Delco League High School Invitational Meet with 250 athletes and all their spectators. And I can go on, but I won't get into the nitty-gritty about sort of the utilization is very, very high. 3,000 plus is what we've averaged per year on that high school pool. With the aging pool, the facility is in dire need of attention, as I think at this point you're aware. I'm not going to, again, dwell into that too much. I think some of this has been shared with you. But I'm going to highlight 3 quick things. It's the locker rooms. I'm hoping that most of you saw the pictures of the locker rooms. It's an undeniable hazard. But in addition, they're inadequate. There's no travel team locker rooms. You have big high schoolers, 150 at a time potentially to meet, fitting into two gender, one men's, one women, locker rooms that honestly are just slightly bigger than my closet at home. But even somewhat more importantly, and this is going to sound a little crass, there is literally one toilet in each of those gender locker rooms, one toilet. So can you imagine at a swim meet with 120 athletes, up to 300 athletes plus at Central Leagues, utilizing one toilet for each of those? So insufficient air, pool filtration, the kids are literally coughing on a daily basis. I'm not exaggerating. Last week, there were kids who came out of the pool upchucking because of the inhalation. And the deck, with 48 years, it is so worn down, it really is akin to a skating rink. And again, without exaggeration and it's documented, a kid falls there daily, and ice is pulled out daily. Last year, with one of the slips, one of our freshman high school swimmers fell and had a concussion. We have stitches quite frequently. It is in dire need. I'll stop there. Can certainly provide more detail as needed. But I want to re-emphasize that Radnor has so much to be proud of with this pool. We're winners. We have graduated Olympians. We send swimmers to PIA state championships and districts every single year. The high school kids, they treasure the swim program. It has become increasingly more popular to the point where yesterday was our day 1, and we had more swimmers and divers who came out for the swim team than ever, with a total of about 20% of the school population. Why do I share these facts? Now I'm going to get into the Breslin quickly. The Breslin report recommends $29 million in investments into athletic facilities. Only 1.8, that's 6%, is allocated to the natatorium. But what makes this investment even more troubling is 2 things. One is there appears to be no dollar allocation to the pool itself. 2, the recommendation is for the investment of that will literally help only a handful of benefactors, as the report proposes an elevator to the spectator balcony, which is no value at all to the existing 1,000 of Radnor swimmers. With that said, we certainly understand the importance of ADA compliance, absolutely understand. But we have a free option. If somebody is in need of a seat, cannot climb the steps for whatever reason, we sit them on the deck with a chair. We are not arguing. The other recommendation in the Breslin report related to the natatorium, including that 1.8, is a secure entry vestibule. We're not arguing that any of these upgrades would be beneficial. Should we have all the money in the world? But the reality is that we have to use our tax dollars smartly and efficiently. I'm almost done. On behalf of the 3,000 plus Radnor High School, Central League, and community members who routinely utilize that pool, we implore you to think beyond building an elevator and a lobby and to consider investment into the natatorium improvements that more directly and efficiently serve the swimming community. But even more broadly, we ask for a strategic evaluation of Radnor High School athletic facility needs. How can we transform our natatorium to align with our best of breed swim status, which it is in fact? These puny, dilapidated locker rooms with a single toilet to be rethought, redesigned, not simply maintained. In the proposal, it's maintenance. In repairing the deck, there is an opportunity to expand out onto the football stands in that top area.
Mrs. Cosgrove, you're at about 7 or 8 minutes. If you could just finish up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. There is no question that all these are important, okay? But we're just asking for a balanced review. The President report recommends $5 million for the Provost field upgrades, $2.8 million for the field house, $2.5 million for a team room, but $0 for the pool deck and the pool itself. Please, we ask that you write this, be wise about the large investment, step back, take a balanced, strategic, and long-term view before allocating athletic facility enhancement dollars. Thank you for hanging in there with me, listening to these facts. On behalf of the Radnor High School swimmers and divers, and as a Radnor taxpayer, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Eleanor Levine. I live at 930 Academy Lane in Bryn Mawr, and I would like to second what Melanie just told you. I, for the last 15 years, have spent in that pool. I've had 2 high school swimmers who've graduated from the program, and my high school swimmers started when they were at Ifan Elementary on RAC. I've sat many, many hours looking at the facilities, and I want to tell you, the locker rooms are completely inadequate. And not only are locker rooms inadequate, but the spectator space is also inadequate. We host some big meets, and we don't have the space for the spectators. So I would really second what Melanie has to say, and I would like you guys to do a further evaluation of what the needs are for our pool. Thank you for the time, and thank you for doing this study and this upgrade.
Thank you. Is there more public comment? Welcome, Mr. Brink.
Good evening. My name is Alan Brink, 214 Hermitage Drive. I think most of you on the board know me. People talk about the fact that I've been around these activities for quite a few years, and whenever I want to put that in perspective, I say, I was first elected to this board the same time that Chuck Madden was first elected to this board in 1995. Chuck, on behalf of your fellow class members of 1995, myself, Art Lewis, Paul Yakulis, and Ellen Amon, we are proud of the 24 years that you have served on this board. Let me also respectfully disagree with what your father said. He talked about bronze. The people of this community are going to remember you for a long time because your name is on Radnor High School for that renovation. Radnor Elementary School, when we built that, I mean, Patty and Lydia were talking about their kids being in that school in his first year, and then, yeah, oh no, I'm getting to the middle school. But the number of nights that we sat through, going through the selection of the site for that and the approval of it. And then finally the middle school, Chuck. That's another one where, your name is on it. I'd also like to comment on one comment that Mike made, and that is, I can think back to those 1990s elections. And yes, when it rained, those signs were wiped out. Our sign technology is so much better today than it was back in the 1990s. The final comment I'd like to make is, about 6 months ago, I got a driver's license with an American flag on it because I'm a veteran. I walk into a car rental place to rent a car, and I put down my driver's license, and the service person says, "Thank you for your service." And I said, I didn't do that much when I was in the military. If you want to thank me for my service, thank me for the 8 years that I served on the school board. I'd like to thank all of these retiring members and even the currently sitting members. Thank you for your service. I know what you put in, and I salute you for your time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brink. Welcome, Dr. Winters.
Welcome. Having been watching the school board meetings for probably more than 24 years, I know what you do in public, and I can only imagine what you do when you're not at the dais. I also wish to thank those people who gave advice to future board members. I think it's very prudent, and I hope it's heeded. Thank you so much again, as Mr. Brink said, for your service, and I know you will continue to care and do what is best for our community. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any final public comment? Mr. Petiti, do we have any by email? Okay, well then, given that, we're going to get right underway with our presentation tonight. I'd like to call this, is the steering committee going to come forward now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So if we could ask those members who are part of our steering committee, we're going to do our presentation for the high school athletic infrastructure project tonight. I believe there we go, there's our architect. There's name tags down here.
Yeah, so we have, as steering committee members come forward to have a seat at the tables, we do have table tents where you can put your name just for board members if you want.
Can you move a chair for Katie? Oh, there, right there. Right.
Ken, while we're getting organized, could I ask a quick question? Was there anybody from the swim team involved? Or the swimming committee? And if not, I highly suggest we get them on there as major
I was
users.
captain of the 1993 swim team.
That doesn't count.
But they were,
well,
I mean, we had asked, I mean, not directly, but they provided a lot of input to me.
Seems to me you may have some volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, those comments tonight that were made, there are some things that, you know, we'll hear through the presentation.
Some were addressed.
That are being addressed.
Yeah.
You know, specifically locker rooms and the pool deck and those pieces. So we'll hear from some of that tonight, that those pieces that are being addressed, you know, in the proposals from the architect tonight.
Okay, so while everyone's getting seated, you know, while this is a presentation for the board, Mr. Miller, I'm going to ask you to, as our chair of facilities, if you could maybe introduce everybody and help lead this presentation portion, and then we'll go from there. So
I'd have to remember the names.
I told you we were
going to
make you work tonight.
I know. I'm just kidding. So this is what I still call it the Bleacher Committee, but it's the High School Athletics Facilities Infrastructure Project Steering Committee. Seated before you, the only people not in front of you are Ken and I. Superintendent Bachelor, and Sarah was added to it. Katie Sampson is over there, and yes, and Mr. Sampson was on it for a little while until his life was cut short tragically. Mr. Hankel is not here tonight. He's also on the committee, but his son Tim is filling in for him ably, and he's on the committee as well as a student representative. The athletic director, Mr. Friel, our facilities director, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Bajukas, member of the public at large, Mr. Dukevich. I'm sorry, not Mr. Dukevich. You two look the same from here. My bad glasses. Steve Breslin, sorry. The architect, Mrs. Sampson. I know the same. My glasses are really that off. And then Sue Addis is member of the public. So that is the members of our steering committee. We've met, I don't know how many hours, because none of us want to count that high, to go over this over at least a year, well over a year, a couple years. We've been at this now, and now they're at the point where we want to present a plan. And with that, I know Ken has some opening remarks before we turn it over to Mr. Bajukas for the introduction.
I'll turn it over to the steering committee in a moment, but just wanted to thank the work of the steering committee. As Mr. Miller mentioned, there has been just a lot of hours and a lot of work that has gone into this, and there has been a lot of feedback through two different community evenings where we received feedback last year. We've continued to have that feedback and discussion with community members as we've moved forward. Tonight's an opportunity for our architect and the steering committee to present the status of their work, and that presentation we're gauging will probably be about a half hour to 45 minutes. I'm going to ask board members if we would let them do the presentation straight through, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. We have a rather light agenda, but this is the main piece on our agenda tonight. So tonight's a night to take the time to ask the questions we want to have, identify those things that we have answers to, those things we don't have answers to. We can have that discussion. I did have an opportunity to send to our community, our entire school district community, an email just outlining this work, outlining the focus and the history behind this, that as we look at this project, it has become focused on accessibility, being ADA compliant with our facility, and it has taken on a focus of wellness as well, as we look at the wellness of our students and our wellness programming for our students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brooks, who I think might be turning over to Mr. Bruhns to do some opening remarks, to turn over to the architect.
Sure. Let me just remind the board that
Phone. No, we're going to have the handheld. Great.
there you go. Let me just remind the board that in May 7th, the Facilities Committee met to hear the feasibility study that was put together by the Schrader Group. Once we heard that, we went ahead and evaluated 3 different architect firms to take us to the next level. The Facilities Committee on 8/13 met to hear the recommendation of hiring Breslin Group to come in and take care of things, and the board approved things on 8/24. Since 8/24 to today, we've been working diligently to put together expanding the original survey to encompass other things that have come up that we found, and incorporating many of the aspects that you're going to hear tonight. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Bruhns, who's going to go through some of the details.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before I start, I want to say to Julia, Patty, Chuck, and Mike, thank you so much for what you've done for our community. I have 3 kids. I made the choice to send them to Radnor schools because of you, all of you. You've left a tremendous legacy on this board of collaboration and effort. And while I know that we may not always see eye to eye, and you all might not always see eye to eye, I know and the community knows that you're doing it in the best interest of the kids. And that's the important thing. And you, it's been, to go to the presentation, I want to say on behalf of everybody that's sitting up here, what a pleasure it's been to work on this project. It has been an absolute pleasure. And again, I don't expect at the end of this that everybody's going to agree on recommendations, but that's the beauty of the board. And that's why the township trusts you to do your job, because we're going to explore these issues and we're going to talk them out, and you're going to come to the right place. And I think we all understand that. From the initial engagement with the community in 2 separate meetings, as Ken said, to the dozens of meetings of the Infrastructure Committee and enduring Mike Miller's jokes, to the numerous discussions at Facilities Committee meetings, this process has been overwhelmingly positive, and the public should understand that it's been focused on the needs of Radnor students and those that this district invites onto this campus, onto our campus. In particular, I want to commend the school administration led by Ken, with principals Dan and PT, Director of Operations Mark, Mike Friel, Michelle, Todd, for their thoughtful approach to these issues that are long-standing. If you didn't know it now and I didn't know it, we have a great team in place here that is incredibly thoughtful, and I know I speak for the parents and alums on this committee when I say that we're just tremendously proud of the team that you all put together. A few things to start. First, let's be clear that what we're discussing today is not a problem of any of our making. We're confronted with this. The ADA issues, the code issues, safety issues, the heavy use of facilities, and the overall decay of the infrastructure inside and outside of our high school building have been mounting for decades. In 1996, Chuck will remember, the school board had a choice about how far to go with renovations, and for reasons that are known to them and were probably perfectly appropriate at the time, they did not choose to renovate the pool, the gymnasium, the exterior of the facility. So what we're dealing with right now, as some of the public has discussed already, is construction from the 50s, 60s, and 70s kind of jammed together. There has been no significant capital improvement to any of this over that time, with the exception of about $900,000 that was spent in 1985 to build the ticket booths, to build a set of bleachers on the visitor side that's since been torn down, and to extend the existing home bleachers a certain amount. That's it. I mean, from all that we've looked at. So if we all have learned one thing from this extensive process, it's this. It's time to make that capital investment for the students, invitees to the campus, and the community. We've engaged experts and have the benefit of the expertise and experience of Katie Sampson and the Henkel family to tell us what anybody who visits this facility knows. The facility is woefully ADA non-compliant. The Prevost home and Yankee bleachers have no ADA seating. They're hazardous, people are falling, students and invited guests have gotten injured. Sorry, dramatic pause. All pathways down to the fields and sidewalks leading to the fields are non-ADA compliant and, again, hazardous. The bathroom facilities are wholly inadequate and not ADA or code compliant in size, structure, or location. The concession areas are dangerous to workers and unsanitary, and much of the parking, sidewalk conditioning grade, and curb cuts fail to comply with the code and the ADA. For those of you who've toured the high school and looked at the fitness room, you understand that not only is the equipment a patchwork of donated material, the room is painfully small, not code compliant, and cannot accommodate the needs of all Radnor High School students who want to have a place to work on fitness without paying for it at local gyms, which our students now do. As was so eloquently described by boys crew coach Ken Pyree during our May meeting. Our one space that can accommodate the entire school, the gym, the auditorium, is not big enough. So the one place where you can bring the entire school together to have a meeting is the gym, which is not air conditioned. And temperature for athletics and other activities can be, in a word, oppressive. The pool area, as you've heard, is not ADA and code compliant and stands virtually the same as in 1971 when built. However, unlike the anticipated school and community swim use, we now have a robust community-operated swim program by Radnor Aquatic that uses the pool for thousands of hours a year with hundreds of people coming in on a daily basis, with a large amount of attendant wear and tear. It's time to address that facility. And that brings me to my third point, which is another driving factor. Not only do at least 80%, if not more, of Radnor High School students and their families use these facilities for sports, band, and other activities, we invite opposing teams and parents from other schools against whom we compete into this situation without warning. We invite the middle school and St. Catherine's athletes and families, as well as their opposing teams, to use our track without notice of these conditions. We invite hundreds of children and their families every night and every weekend onto our campus for soccer in the fall, lacrosse and baseball in the spring, and the pool virtually year-round, again, without addressing these conditions. These facilities were not designed for this amount of extensive spectator and athletes use, period. The surrounding areas were not designed for this type of traffic, and the entire area has deteriorated as a result. So that's how we got here. Recognizing the needs and concerns expressed by the community and the administration, the committee is presenting a recommended plan to resolve the identified issues. This is a solution that's going to last you 30 years or more. It's the right solution, and it's forward thinking. It addresses the needs of all students, not just athletes, and provides a safe and accessible space for all the users, students, community, and invitees. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's a plan that proposes what is necessary with a forward vision that recognizes future classroom need and space flexibility, given the projected student growth in population, economies of scale and cost. What are we going to be looking back 5 years from now and saying we should have done? Avoiding the trap of building something only to return in a few years and have to tear it up and start again or build over it, and providing the opportunity, as Ken mentioned, to create a dynamic wellness curriculum consistent with the board's stated goals of wellness. Finally, to understand how important this project is, we need to look no further than the 24 student athletes that we've heard about that just signed letters of intent to continue their athletics in college. This is about education. This creates an opportunity for all students, regardless of financial status, to reach that achievement. And for those of you with students in the district, you probably got a letter this week telling you about the BMI of your student. And that's another part of this wellness. What are we saying to our public when we tell them that, but we don't have a viable solution for them in a wellness program? That's what we're starting here. That's what you have the opportunity to do. Obviously, there's going to be disagreement about how we put that into effect, but the basics are undeniable. You've heard it from the people about the pool. You've heard it from people at the last meeting about injuries. There's things that just have to be done. And are we going to do it smartly and be able to live with it for 30 years and enjoy it and raise our students? Or are we going to be looking back 5 years from now and saying, well, we got to drive over that field that we just replaced because we really needed to do this for classroom space, or we really need a revised fitness center? And that's really what you're confronting today. And I thank you very much again for the opportunity to make that statement.
While we switch to our architect, just wanted to mention, we will be posting on our website, and there's already on our website is the information of the work of this steering committee. We've provided links to that. We are offering we will be posting this week some opportunities for some community tours of our current facility, so that if people want to take advantage of that opportunity to go on a tour, Mr. Brooks will be publishing some dates for those opportunities for people to tour the facility, and they can see not only the current facility, but an opportunity to see some of these things that are being proposed tonight.
And can I just clarify quickly? So this tonight has some of the updated slides. Well, this is going to be the one that will be posted?
Yes, so what we will do is, and Steve, let me make sure I'm accurate with this. There have been a few changes with the slides and some updates since what we posted publicly on Friday. So this presentation tonight, after it's presented tonight, by tomorrow morning, Mr. Petiti will have that one in place on both board docs and the links to our website to replace the previous one. There's some additional slides in this one, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that introduction and background, Jeff. I would echo that it has been a pleasurable process, very, very thoughtful and very engaging. My participation in the committee started in earnest 2 months ago to the day, September 19th, when we had our kickoff meeting. And so I was, let's see, there we go, brought up to speed on the project vision. And that was touched on a bit, so I'll go through it quickly. But the vision priorities really fit into two categories generally, as I have up here. Addressing select high school capital needs, the interior and exterior safety and ADA enhancements that have been spoken to, infrastructure upgrades to the athletic wing, again, having been spoken to in terms of the most recent construction project not having been a comprehensive renovation of the entire school facility. So there's some of that is being picked up in the athletic wing. But then also additional general education space, which is related to potentials for not only changes in current use, but future enrollment growth. And then the need for a state-of-the-art space for the wellness and fitness program that's been spoken to as well. And the need for that to be accommodated in a place that really doesn't exist within the facility at the moment. And then the second category being more broadly on the campus, the ADA accessibility, traffic flow. There is a desire to continue to ease the congestion of bus and car traffic that's on campus that everybody experiences regularly. Also to integrate these ADA features that we're proposing into the design. So as was also spoken to by the students, the desire for folks that need ramps to be part of the flow, the ebb and flow, and can those ramps actually be integrated into the design in a way that they're available for everybody, that it's a unifying feature of the design, not something that separates one group of people from another. And then, again, more broadly, the pedestrian connectivity on campus related to ADA, but as well as just the general way that some of the sidewalks and walkways and pathways on campus need to be connected in a safer, more comprehensive way. Brief history. My work began with looking at the study of the options that was completed in the spring of this year. The current work that we've been engaged in over the past 60 days by the Infrastructure Committee, myself and my team at Breslin, as well as ELA Sports and Hugh Cadzo and his team, we reviewed and refined that menu of construction options that was presented in the study, did a deeper evaluation of some of the components that were not looked at in that phase, which was related to the evaluation of the high school wing from a mechanical and electrical standpoint, spoken to the air conditioning as a prime example of that, and a deeper evaluation into the natatorium through the work of a pool consultant, and to analyze the athletic facilities utilization. So that's both the locker rooms and team rooms within the building, as well as the exterior fields, and prepare a recommended option with preliminary plans, budget, and phasing, so that what's presented is an actionable project that can be, if selected, can be moved forward. And then the ongoing work that is incomplete, but we are continuing to push forward on, is a campus-wide ADA assessment, a full property survey. Those two things will work closely together to help us address moving forward things from a holistic campus-wide standpoint. And then a benchmarking exercise to look at, I talked about the facilities utilization, but also benchmarking the athletic facilities against peer high schools locally. Again, Jeff mentioned it's not necessarily keeping up with the Joneses exercise so much as it is finding where a baseline of safety and functionality can be achieved. So the recommended project scope, I will go through this list just to give you the overall picture and then break it down with a series of slides into the individual components. So the recommended project scope involves work at Prevost Field, the home bleacher replacement, and a new retaining wall that will be structurally required behind it. The turf replacement and track resurfacing, and improved ADA access. So that's really on both sides of the high school, trying to create a better access at the field level and to the bleachers. At Enke Field, again, a bleacher replacement and improved ADA access as well there to the field level. And a fitness and classroom wing addition that is a two-story construction with a fitness room, with classrooms, with athletic space, and then incorporated into that would be gates and ticketing at that end of the building. And the natatorium lobby addition also includes a secure entry vestibule, ADA parking, and ramp worked into that section of the construction, elevator to the spectator balcony, as well as some pool system enhancements and finishes that I'll get into later. And then interior high school renovation. So this is looking at the present utilization of the locker room space, recognizing the need for more team rooms, accommodating those renovations, better current trainer and officials facilities, classroom space, air conditioning of the athletic wing. A field house that would be positioned such that it could support both Prevost and Enke fields and provide ADA spectator viewing, as well as a lot of other necessary components that I'll explore with you. And then also a new access drive proposed between Route 30 and Radnor-Chester Road that could assist with that part of the vision that relates to pulling traffic flow off of some of the other campus roadways, better parking, more parking, better bus drop-off, and then the possibility of relocation of the maintenance department. So this is a look at the tennis court end of Prevo, and for explanation, the white area is the existing high school floor plan. The gray areas are areas that are undergoing significant alteration, moving walls, that sort of thing. And then the tan area is new addition. So this is that patio area that exists outside the wrestling room. These are the bleachers, the new bleachers. And so what you're seeing here is the upper level. This would be at the floor elevation of the high school. And this is on the upper story of what is the two-story addition. So you can see here with an enlargement that this is the existing fitness room, and that is being replaced by a new over 4,000 square foot fitness room. So that essentially almost triples the size of the existing room. Where the fitness room is presently would be converted to a classroom, and the trainer would be relocated to this area to get closer with modern, properly sized facilities for the trainer and closer to this function. So we have the opportunity for 2 additional classrooms in new construction, and then this large fitness room that would be designed to accommodate student athletes as well as non-athletes and support the physical education and an athletic wellness program. And that would have the opportunity to be very open and glassy that could then look out from that elevated position out onto the field. And then there's also the opportunity then for direct access to the upper level of the bleachers and that patio from that addition. If we look at the lower level, this again is the only existing space on that lower level is the boys' locker room. The rest of this is below the main elevation of the high school. And before looking a little bit further at the building construction, I'll point out that coming off of the traffic circle here adjacent to the parking lot, we would have a nominally at-grade new entrance and an opportunity for ticketing and direct access to the field level from that area. So now we have a new opportunity with ADA access to split the traffic between 2 ends of the high school. Then this could also access the lower side, the lower elevation of the bleachers, and then have a ramp worked into the new bleachers that would then allow ADA accessibility to the bottom bleachers. So both the bottom of the bleachers and the top would be accessible in this scheme. This is an enlargement of that lower level that has direct field level access that would be able to provide new public restrooms that would support the field. No longer would the public have to ascend the bleachers to get to the grossly undersized public toilet facilities that are within the high school building. That's right there at the grade level access to the field. There would also be some storage for field level activities, and then a connection to the existing boys' locker room, and then an addition of a team room, and then through a interior access and then a tunnel alongside the new bleachers, the team would be able to access directly to the field. Again, not having to go upstairs, across the patio, and then down the bleachers. And this is a view, a very preliminary rendering of what that entrance could begin to look like from that, it's as if we're standing in the traffic circle now, looking into the field. So we could create a plaza here with some seating, new gates and ticketing opportunity here. And you can get a sense for the glassy, very inviting and exciting second floor view that that fitness room would have out over the field. So then moving to the other side of the gymnasium and looking at the natatorium area. This is the natatorium here. And again, we're showing dark gray in that is areas that would be altered significantly within the building. So, and then there's also the addition of a secure lobby. At present, there's the circulation problems with the natatorium are that there really is no way to provide secure access to the high school building in a way that would allow the public and clubs to enter the natatorium without entering the school building. Also, there is no direct access from the corridor system of the high school into the natatorium without going through the locker rooms. So what we would do is create a new lobby with direct access into the natatorium. The storage area that's displaced by that, we would create new. The lockers have an opportunity to be expanded here and completely renovated. We heard about the lack of proper toilet facilities that could be addressed, as well as a modest expansion to the locker rooms itself. Obviously, there's constraints there, but we would maximize that. And then also have the opportunity for those stairs that access the balcony above to be within that lobby, so they're no longer exiting to the exterior, and then have the opportunity for an elevator to be worked in as well. This is an enlargement of that plan. And then we have an enlargement of the upper level, where that elevator would access. Now we could develop a viewing concourse, a small position there for folks to get close to the edge of the balcony and get a proper view without looking from the back. And then using some underutilized mechanical space, we could create a larger space at that balcony level for concession or viewing. Also, then, one of the things that we identified in terms of utilizing space within the building better is the lack of team rooms that support not only visiting teams, but the Radnor teams as well. And so through some fairly modest renovations, we could have the opportunity to access some of those team rooms directly off the corridor. Looking a little bit further now, we're looking at the field house that would be located between the fields, between Prevost and Enke fields. This is where we'll begin to see some of the site features that have been alluded to. We would look to realign this roadway that comes along and then accesses past the drop-off area at the rear, and then we could expand and provide ADA parking within that lower parking lot. That would then provide access not only to the natatorium and that portion of the building at grade with ADA parking, but then through a series of ramps that also would double as spectator opportunities. When I was here at a football game to observe, this was an area where there was a lot of folks congregating and viewing the game from that elevated position. We could work that in so that, again, these are accessible features that are open to everyone. So the field house would be 2 stories. We'd have 2 opportunities potentially for ticketing. I'll enlarge this view a little bit. So we're looking at the upper level of that field house, which would be nominally at the sidewalk elevation of the road. And that would be an opportunity for viewing, an open viewing concourse on the second level, some ticketing here, and then through a series of ramps, access down to the field level. If we look at that lower level of the field house, that would again provide us some opportunities for public toilet rooms to access both fields, concession to access both fields, team rooms. Here we identified the need for two, both home and visitors. So this could be the visiting team room for Prevo, and then both home and visiting team to support Enki. And then again, some officials space, and then some field level storage. This is a view of another project that we designed that did, as an example, shows a long-oriented linear field house that is of the kind that would be employed to serve both of those fields. So, and then also to show the bleachers. So the bleachers that exist we know are very steep and unsafe. The new bleachers would be of a more gentle slope, would meet current guidelines in that area. Here's an example of a ADA solution that we don't want. So we're looking again to make this an inviting opportunity. And so here's an example of something that is more akin to what we're envisioning, which would be, again, with those curves that sort of match the landscape that everybody would be eager to use. And again, this is also a situation where we're overcoming some slope, and so those sloped areas could be landscaped and be quite beautiful and inviting. So this is a view, again, of the overall site plan, and I'll move on to describing this new access road that is being proposed. So this would connect Radnor Chester Road and 30 with right in, right out only. We anticipate that that's what would be permissible here. So there would be no left turns out of this roadway. And it is really for a threefold opportunity. One would be to provide additional drop-off and parking area. There's about roughly 50 additional parking spaces that would support the campus, would provide a drop-off area for during the week or at sporting events. Secondly, it would provide a space for large vehicles, team buses, the ambulance that already comes into that area during events that would allow them to find a place more appropriate than some of the other locations where they are on campus. And then thirdly, to provide an opportunity to relocate the maintenance department. And what that does is then we could position a maintenance facility behind the bleachers on the visitor side, provide adequate storage and employee parking for that area. What's shown here is a dedicated one-way drop-off loop with parking within it. And this is Enki Field here and Prevo, and then the field house is between. So this is also a great opportunity for more ADA parking that would serve both fields at the field level. And then on the right-hand side, this is the area where the maintenance department is currently housed within the high school building itself. That space would be adequately sized to be renovated into 4 classrooms. So a real opportunity to capture back some education space for the high school proper. In addition to the plans, we looked at schedule and phasing of this potential project, and I have 2 headings here. One is what I call the critical path components, in the sense that those are the schedule-driven reactions to the core of the phasing, the land development process that would be necessary to get authority approval of it, of the project, and then some flexible components in the sense that they could be phased at different locations within the entire project life cycle. So very, very quickly, if the board were to approve an option sometime prior to January, then we could imagine a schematic design phase, and that's the phase where we take this option, what is approved, and develop the design in more detail. And then that gets us to the point where we have plans that are suitable for the land development submission. And we would imagine that to be in the April timeframe. And then beyond that is completion of design development. That's where we look at in much greater detail into individual spaces within the project. So we would meet with constituency groups for all of the spaces that are involved and do a very detailed design, everything from the preferred mechanical systems to how cabinetry is laid out in those spaces. And then we would move into the construction document phase. And that is where we would take that design that's reviewed and approved and then create bid documents, detailed design, and that would then be the basis of bid documents. And that would take us out to February of 2021, where we would also anticipate receiving land development approval for the additions to the building. And then we could envision bidding in March of 2021, reviewing bids. The board at that point has the opportunity to review the bids, make the decisions on if there's alternates, what's in and what's out of the project, and then ultimately award contracts, issue a notice to proceed for construction to begin. And then the completion of the building additions, we would anticipate something in the time frame of March 2022 for that. Now, the other components that are related are the Prevost and Enke field work and bleachers. We want to be careful about that phasing because if you recall, the fitness and classroom addition is nestled right in behind the stadium and the building. And so if we need to traverse that area for construction activities, we may want to consider waiting till after that work is complete to do the field work so that construction's not going over top of it and damaging and adding costs related to protection. The field house construction, if that were to occur to be completed at the end of 2021, then that would be available then for spring sports. And then the access road and maintenance building is that we anticipate a longer approval process because of the roadway access points, as well as some of the site-related approvals that would be in that area of the site near the creek. And so that we anticipate a longer approval process, and perhaps that work could commence in 2022. Budgetary cost estimates. We have a construction cost as well as soft cost. So there's two buckets that relate to the project, overall project cost in general terms. One is the actual hard construction cost. The total of that for the recommended option is $22.3 million. The soft costs that are associated with that, I'll explain in a moment. That would be $6.5 million for a total of $28.8 million. Anticipating the number one question, how does this relate to the scope of the prior study? It's exceeding it by over $10 million, largely because of the things that were added to the scope, and that is the list here: athletic wing air conditioning, interior renovations to the high school, classroom and team room, additions to that fitness wing addition to support general education in addition to athletics. The natatorium work is really new to this phase of the study. We also were looking at relocating some of the venues with regard to track and field that weren't, and then also equipment that's going to be required for, and I think primarily the fitness room. There's obviously a large amount of soft costs associated with that we want to account for in the overall project cost. How do we go about developing these numbers? My firm has deep experience in the educational market, so we're looking at our own in-house cost history as well as recent local bidding of projects that are in your area and would include the same prevailing wage rates and labor costs. We also incorporated the work from ELA Sport with regard to the site budgeting. Mechanical and electrical systems were looked at very carefully and budgeted. Our team included Lehigh Valley engineers. And then the pool systems assessment and budget information was provided by Atlantic Aquatic. Just to break that overall number down a little bit further, you see here there's 12 line items that break out those major chunks of the work. Everything from the bleachers and the site retaining wall and the track and the turf. At Prevo, at Enki, the field house value, the fitness and education components that are really best supported on the upper level of the addition versus the more pure athletic components and support of the stadium on the lower level of the addition. Those high school interior alterations I was speaking about, the athletic wing air conditioning, the natatorium lobby and an addition and pool improvements. And in response to some of the public comment, I will point out that those numbers do indeed include things like the locker room renovation and expansion, some systems upgrades that were identified in the assessment, finishes related to the plaster surface of the pool itself, as well as the tile replacement that's on the deck, and then also new lighting. Anybody who's been in there realizes that the lighting is dim. We can raise those lighting levels. That has an effect both on the spectator experience as well as the athletes being able to see better. And so those are elements that are within that number. The new access road, that's the what I was describing with regard to the connection between Route 30 and Radnor-Chester Road. And then a pre-engineered maintenance building, an economical solution, we believe, in this case. And then the maintenance area alterations to create those 4 classrooms are depicted. And then some improvements to the tennis courts as well with regard to, again, accessibility, spectator seating, and that sort of thing. And then this category that I alluded to a moment ago, project soft costs, that includes architect, engineers, construction management fees, testing, surveys, agency approvals, which there'll be many of those involved in this project, movable equipment, things like fitness room, classroom, furniture, financing costs. We feel it's prudent at this point to include a 20% contingency to allow for design and construction elements that could be discovered as we get deeper into the design, and then also an escalation figure for bidding next year. And so that we have at $6.5 million. Went through a lot of information as efficiently as I think I can, but I'm sure there's questions, and we'd love to field those and discuss further.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is maybe just start down, with all due respect, yeah, Mike and Sarah can go last, they were on the committee, but starting down here with Andrew, Dr. Babson, do you have, we'll just make our way kind of down, skip over me, but.
Sure, we'll
thank you for going through a lot of information. I think that, just to start off, that I think we can all agree that these changes are pretty long overdue, and just having a vision like this is very helpful and very welcome. And I think that we might differ here in this board about priorities of parts of this that might need to be done, but I think we can all agree that that some version of this plan is overdue. I do not have any specific questions at this time. I'd like to kind of see how the conversation evolves, and then I'll jump back in with more specific questions. Thanks.
Julia?
I'm not going to ask any questions at this time.
Okay, Patty.
Just quickly, the access road that you mentioned on the far side of the football field and the other field, Yankee Field, just in case you guys didn't realize, we actually went down this road before, and PennDOT, in a discussion with Leo, said that they would not allow access onto Radnor-Chester Road on a breakthrough there. So that's one point. Maybe they'll change their minds, but that's why the road is now on the other side. The road that we did put in between the our shared site, or the site next to us and the baseball field, was because PennDOT would not allow us to put a breakthrough down lower. I'm also concerned about the impact of that much impervious, or even if you put down the latest and the greatest surfaces, it's a lot of extra water. We already have water problems on that part of the property. So I'd be concerned about that. I know we're doing a wetland study, so I guess I'll be very interested to understand what the feedback is of true wetlands on that part of the property. Mentioned in the timeline is start of that access road, and I guess really that means the maintenance building then too would be in 2022 after the rest of the stuff is done.
Correct.
Where does maintenance go in the interim? So I get that's, you don't have to answer me because I'm leaving this board in a matter of probably less than an hour, but that is something I think that you guys would want to care about. Oh, no, I am leaving. Whether you're still having the conversation or not, I am done. My service to this district, 12 years, is done. So I just, would like to understand at some point, or maybe you all might want to know, where the maintenance stuff is going to go. To do all the work you need to do in the building, you need to get a lot of stuff out of the building. So interesting to hear where that happens. And then my only other question is, with the plan as it's mapped out, and let's hope and assume that we get it done on time, that's March of 2022. There were a lot of comments made earlier at the beginning of this discussion about unsafe, unsanitary, other conditions as to why we need to replace this stuff. So what are we doing for the next 2 years about unsanitary and unsafe conditions while we wait for this to get done? So I think y'all need to talk about that stuff. We've pushed this bleacher situation down the road now. It'll be 3 years. It's 3 years since we started talking about the need to address the bleachers at the high school. And it'll be 2 more at least before you get there. So they're not in good condition. So I encourage y'all to think about that stuff.
I'm sorry to speak out of turn, but if I could just jump back in very quickly. I think it's important to frame this as an ADA-oriented project and a much more comprehensive project than just a bleacher project. I know that that's been kind of a shorthand, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Andrew, but just because I use the word bleacher doesn't mean that I'm not taking into consideration ADA, and I've brought that up on multiple occasions. So I'm really kind of tired of people looking at me and saying, you just want the bleachers. No, I don't. I want bleachers that are fully accessible and appropriate for people that live in our community. But I don't believe we should be anchoring that to all this other stuff. That's my point.
Lydia.
All right, I have a lot of questions, and I'm not sure who should answer them. Maybe there won't be an answer, but I want to put them out there for consideration. Okay. Let's go. So one thing I don't see on here, we're going to be having hopefully a track installed around 2 sides of the perimeter of the high school. that was in the works way before any of this came along, I believe.
You mean the trail?
I mean the trail. Well, it is going to be a track, too. But the trail, they're calling it the trail. And I believe for that project, we're losing approximately 100 trees around the front of the property and the side. And they're going to replace some of them, I guess, but they're not going to be the same stature as the trees that we have there now. So my question is, how many more trees are we going to lose for this left-hand bus loop maintenance facility concept? Because I'm very concerned about, and this moves into the impervious runoff, but I just don't want to denude this property. I mean, I think it's beautiful to drive in front of our high school now, where you look at basically what looks like a woodland. And I don't want to ruin the feel of our high school and make it look like, just a construction, we flattened it and put in concrete. So I would like an answer to that. I would like to know what we're planning to do. Okay, so I counted 3 more classrooms on the upper level and then 4 more at the maintenance site. Correct. So I'm just curious what programming we need 7 new classrooms for. I know you always expand to the space you have, but we did a study pretty comprehensively. What was that, 3 years ago, that said we're not going to have space constraints in our high school, really. We have a slight bump now, but it's not going to be the case going forward. So just really, what is the programming for these 7 new classrooms? Also, I do not understand all these new team rooms that we're going to have. So it looks like there's going to be 2 on the upper level and then 2 more in the field house. So I don't know. I just need to understand that. And then the final one. I have not heard a single discussion of how we're going to pay for this. I've sat on this board for 10 years, and honestly, our most heated discussions have been around finance. And so we cannot consider anything. I know Mike's like going to fall out of his chair. We cannot consider. We can't really consider anything of this magnitude, and with an extra $10 million thrown in, until somebody shows me a pretty detailed financial plan of this. So can I just say where I'm coming from on this? What I would like to see is expedited ADA compliance, and that does not involve 7 other things in this project, but I would like to see that done immediately. And I don't think that that means we're going to have to tear them up if we choose to do something later, but we need to do that right away. We are out of federal compliance with that. And then I agree with the safety issue of the bleachers, and we've been talking about that on this board for a couple of years. So my preference would be to unbundle all of this. This is not, you got to do all 8 of them or you're going to do nothing. I don't think that that's the right way to look at this. I think that there's varying levels of priority within this, and to me, the ADA compliance is top priority. And so if we can unravel this, we can do that quicker. I don't want to wait for 2 or 3 years to have ADA compliance. And with regard to ADA compliance, there was an idea at one point of having an elevator, and not just to the pool deck, but an external elevator, so that people could really get to all the different decks. And I see now, I think what you've done is ramps instead. I'm just not sure that those are as easy to traverse for people as you think they might be. I'm not sure how easy it is to push a wheelchair up to it's quite a big leap up there. So I would like to also just go back to the question of the elevator to get people most expeditiously to the different levels. I mean, we have the ramps as well, but I just think that meets the needs most directly. So my priority would be to get these critical pieces done immediately and then talk about, and to me, I disagree with Dr. Babson. I don't think all of these need to be done. I'm I think some of them, maybe to some degree, need to get done, but to me, there's different priorities within this, and so, and again, I want to...
That is what I, to be fair, I mean, I said that, that people on the board here are going to have different priorities. So.
Yeah. So fair enough. I don't think moving the maintenance facility has anything to do with 8A compliance. To me, they're just different topics completely. And so that's where I am on this now. And, you know, I think this is an extremely ambitious timeline to say we're going to be voting on this. We have 4 new board members coming on here, you know, who, I'm sorry, in all due respect, haven't really even been through a budget cycle. So then to saddle them with, you know, what are we talking now? $27 million in debt?
Lydia, if I can interrupt you for 10 seconds, I will remind you, too, that is, I sincerely appreciate your comments.
I thought you were going to fall over.
It was worth staying for another 20 minutes to hear that. But I do want you to also remember, too, that as you guys look at this, and for you new board members, you also have a project about what's going on with our elementary schools. And there's going to be dollars associated with that, too. So you really need to put the spending overall in context of other things that the district needs to worry about that are priority.
So we're going to let Mark, and I think you had a plan for answering some of Lydia's questions. If you don't, maybe you can expand on this, but I do want to just reframe we're not so much out of compliance with ADA as we are grandfathered. You know, we are grandfathered for some of our existing ADA non-compliance. And okay, no. My point is that it's, you know, we're not outwardly breaking the law. We need to address these things, and we need to address them. Katie, believe me, I'm like right there with you on that. But Mark, do you want to go ahead and answer some of Lydia's questions? I'm assuming you jotted them down.
As for the trees, we recognize the fact that there would be some trees that might be taken down. Part of the survey that we've encountered, you all approved, was to do a tree survey as well, so that we can keep track of that. We don't have that data yet, but that's something that certainly will be taken into consideration moving forward. As for the classrooms, you're right, there's 4 in the maintenance area. There's 3 additional classrooms, 2 new ones, and then 1 would be redone from the existing fitness room. And you are correct, you guys did a capacity survey in 2016. Let me see if I can't pull up. So what I did with this was, let me just get to the front. So in 2016, just as a point of reference, if you remember last month, Sean and I made a presentation to you about the capacity throughout the district, and that's to the right where it says RHS. So currently, under 1920 number of students is 1,206 students. If you remember in 2016, I think this is what you're referring to, the study that was done by the high school to determine the capacity at that time, and these were the numbers that essentially you came up with. 1518 is an 80%. So when you look at things, PDE has a maximum number of students, and then there's a prevailing wisdom that you do 80% of that to make it safe. You don't want to have the school overcrowded. So at that, we would be able to handle currently with the building the way it is now, 1,518 students. Now, I wasn't here in 2016, but I did look at the Pell data that you had, and that unfortunately has not proven out to be correct, that there's actually 300 more students in this district today than there were when you had that study done. So moving forward, we want to make sure that all the buildings have capacity. And looking to the future, we're looking at, making sure that with 7 classrooms, 3 initially, 4 for the maintenance, depending upon whether or not we do the maintenance is still yet to be decided. But by having 3 additional classrooms, we felt that that would at least be able to handle the projected 300 students that we're anticipating having over the next 5 years come into the district. As for the team rooms, and let me go back to the other slide. 3 team rooms. Yes, there's actually only 3 team rooms. And that, let me get to that presentation. So we have 2 on the, let me back up here. So we have 1 at the bottom of, we actually have more than 3.
1 in the lower level of the fitness addition, and then 2 in the field.
Correct. So we have a team room here. The problem with the locker room currently is that it is overcrowded in there with the football team. There's no place for the students to come in to sit, the athletes to sit. So we looked at an area that we could have them come in and have a whiteboard discussion with the coach, things of that nature. So that's that team room that we looked at there. We actually have other team rooms here that we're looking at, the 2 additional ones that are up in the main hallway. We currently do not have any team rooms for basketball, volleyball, or any other activities that go on in the gym or the pool. This will allow for that. So those 2 team rooms are taking existing space and repurposing that's been underutilized in the girls' locker room. And then, of course, out in the field house, you're correct, we do have 2 team rooms out there, one of which we currently have. We envision having the opposing team from Prevo use that room during halftime, as well as having the 2 rooms there for either team, ours and the opposing team for Anki. So that's the reason why we had the number of team rooms that we did. We have 3 new ones. We have 2 that are being repurposed from the girls' locker room. Okay. How do we pay for this? We can certainly go into that conversation moving forward. The external elevator, we did look at that. One of the concerns that we had with that was without the ramp system, we really don't have a way for the band. And again, a lot of people have criticized that this is just for athletics. It's not. This is, try to look at this holistically across every stakeholder in the Radnor community, and the band has a major part in that. So we need to have a ramp for the band to be able to get the larger instruments down to the field area safely. We also saw this as an area that if we had elevators, sometimes you can have some safety and security issues. Ramps are easier, for example, to maintain than steps are. I can have a plow go down there. That's a lot easier and cheaper than having somebody shovel the steps. So we looked at this, trying to look at this from the most economical way of not only the cost initially coming in, but also long-term maintenance costs moving forward. And then I think that pretty much covers it.
Let me, can I just jump?
Wait, hang on, Jeff has one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jeff,
So
then I'll circle
I
back.
think the other question, which, again, totally respect the position that you're taking, which is get the ADA done now, because that's an issue now. But here's the challenge. When you say that, it's not just putting up a railing. When you stick a shovel in the ground, you're going to have to comply. That means having the right number of parking spaces, having the right number of bathrooms. You have a $1 million plus retaining wall that you're going to have to pour when you take out the bleachers, because the retaining wall now is too close to the building. So to come into code compliance, you're going to have to do that. All the sidewalks leading up to this are blown apart by trees. They're going to have to be replaced. The Enki field is not ADA or code compliant. So if you're talking about that, you're going to have to fix that. So, and again, I'm not trying to do a parade of horribles, but when you stick a shovel in the ground and you fix this, you've got to fix it all. The reason why we're talking about team rooms and the field house is in part because right now we ask opposing teams, any team that plays on any field outside, to walk up our bleachers into not a locker room, into the adjunct or to the extra gym. There's no bathroom facilities for them there. So when you start talking, when we stepped back and we talked to the public and we did an accounting, we had a kid from an opposing team in the last 5 years break his ankle going up those stairs, an athlete. We had a referee fall down those stairs. You heard at the last meeting, we've had people fall in the Enki field area and ambulances have to be called. So I know that it's attractive to say we want to fix the bleachers, and I totally get that, and I totally agree. I mean, my kids are going to be gone. This is something that we're all going to be leaving for everybody. But when we said that originally, the administration went out and they asked a design and build bleacher company to come in and build new bleachers. And they came in and they said, we can't do that. We literally cannot do that. So this idea that we could have done these things 2 years ago, we would be still in the same planning, in the same permitting, and facing all the same issues. You have a situation now where the ramp down to that field is not ADA compliant. So I'm not saying there aren't other ways to solve the problems, because I think, you know, I mean, this is about hearing ideas. But you've had people working for a year and a half to try to come up with economical ways to get this done. Talking with, you know, with Katie and experts about how people move around in complexes like this. This is not a bronze statue that we're looking for here. You know, what we're talking about is, if you're gonna do it, and you need, I mean, people need to go and look. I know you have, but people need to go and look at what the weight room is for all the students. When you move facilities into the high school, you took the weight room from where it was and you put it in a classroom. They can only run 3 treadmills at one time because it blows the fuse if they plug in 4. I mean, so I get it. I mean, and I understand the economics of it. But you've been living on you've taken this car, you've driven it 300,000 miles, or 300,000 miles. You've gotten great mileage out of this car. And this isn't a Bentley that we're buying. This is it's an American-made car. It's going to do its job. It's not, there are a lot of schools that have bigger gyms. There are a lot of schools that have bigger weight rooms. There are a lot of schools that have, Conestoga's football field has 2 concession stands. We're not looking at that. What we're saying is, for the safety of all the people that we bring on, I mean, what happens when there's a lightning storm? You know what happens now? The kids on the field have to haul ass, pardon my French, to the front of the school to get on their bus. And if you're a parent and you've left your kid at that field for a soccer practice and you've gone off home, there's nowhere for them to go. The school's locked. They're in the middle of a lightning storm. There's no cover. If they have to go to the bathroom, hopefully that the porta-john is there. If you have to go to the bathroom, you have to walk all the way across the field to get to the porta-john. So I get it. But if we're going to do it, please, let's just do it right. If you want to say, don't do this part, totally understand that. And put us to the question. I encourage, I mean, please, and like you're doing, put us to the question. Because we've spent, I mean, Chris, everybody here, we've racked our brains to get this right. That's what we've done. I wish it was as easy as just building a set of bleachers. And I don't mean any disrespect by that at all. Okay? I don't mean it disrespectful at all. But I mean,
one of the other questions was questions about, how will we pay? And we did have a meeting in June, on June 4th, where we had asked Zach Willard and Garrett Moore from our PFM financial advisors to come and talk to us about, just our current debt and new money analysis. So that was a conversation we had on June 4th in light of this project. Michelle Deco, our business manager, I know has been looking this at as well. So we shared that new money analysis with the board again on Friday for them to receive that. Michelle, maybe you could share just a little bit our current, what percentage of our current budget is.
But they came to the finance committee. That's the presentation was to the finance committee.
Finance committee. And maybe you could share some current information about what is our current percentage of our budget that is debt service, and what would we be looking at if we went out. One of the things we discussed that night in June 4th was looking at bonds and wrapping those bonds around. Was one of the, using a wraparound bond was some of the scenario. Obviously, that's not a question we necessarily need to solve tonight. We've had some presentations, but that is a conversation we have to continue to have.
So could I just say one thing about this timeline? I am 100% convinced that most people in this community do not know that we are talking about an expenditure of this kind of money on a facility that you want us to vote on in the next 6 weeks. I do not think that this has had scrutiny by the community. I will do what the community wants. I'm a representative of this community. I am not sure that they want this kind of money spent in this way. I mean, we have to look at the education of the whole child. We have to look at the contracts. We have contracts with several different unions, with different groups in our community. This is a major expenditure. This dwarfs what we needed to do to implement full-day kindergarten, which has vast educational benefit to our students. So I am not convinced that we have the backing of the whole community for this. And if I'm wrong, if no one comes forward, I don't want to vote on this in 6 weeks, though. I want to give the community a longer time to absorb this. And if people come forward and everybody's in support of this, well, I'm there too. But
I would go further to add to what you're saying is, this presentation is coming to 4 lame ducks. I feel like it's a waste of time, of your time, to be presenting this now. It's very unfortunate. Why don't you table this at least until next month, when people who will be ready to be fully engaged and ask questions that will be answered from 1 month to the next are going to be here and be ready? I don't understand why we're doing this tonight.
So, appreciate everybody's comments so far. The reason that we're doing this tonight is that months ago, this was good, bad, or, for better or worse, this was the timeline that we laid out months ago. When we laid out a cost estimate, when was that, the first one that was about $15 to $18 million? How many months ago was that? A number of months ago. It was in May, thank you. So almost 6 months ago. The reality is that, in fact, people didn't storm the castle and say we're widely opposed. People didn't storm the castle and say, come do this tomorrow. So, and I'm not saying yes, no, or anything to either. I'm just saying pretty large numbers have been out there. This is a much larger number. I appreciate that. But Julia, to your point, and even Lydia, to your point, whenever it is that our board, however it's constituted, contemplates, votes, moves forward on this, this is an opportunity for us to do the presentation, and this is the beginning, potentially, of getting the word out there. And, the sooner we get the word out, the sooner we engage the public, the sooner we vet this publicly. I mean, all the things that we've been talking about, in my opinion, this is just me, the better. So that was the reason, Julia, to your point, to not hold off. I mean, the 4, people who are coming on our board have actually been profoundly engaged and, coming and paying attention. I fully understand your position on it, Julia, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying they've already been working, and this is yet another opportunity for them and for the whole public to be engaged and educated about this.
Fair enough, though, Susan. I got you on that. I just remind you, remember back to when you first joined the board and you sat in exec session for the first time and you started hearing all the stuff we have to talk about in exec session. It is 180 degrees from what you get out there, no matter how many meetings you pay attention to and you listen to. So until those board members are on and they really hear all of the stuff we have to deal with on this board and the financial obligations and the other issues that are stated before us, I don't think it's fair to say that they are anywhere near informed enough. And I wholly respect you've been sitting in the chairs and maybe paying attention to what's going on with these meetings. You don't know the half of it. So I think they need to
Actually,
I mean, no, Mike and I are just conferring on that.
We've never talked about this in exec session.
It's not appropriate to talk about an exec.
I don't mean this topic.
Oh, you mean all the other crap?
I mean every
topic wouldn't be an executive session issue.
Crap.
All right.
Nice
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Nice
Really
issues that you
clear
three will
that.
have to deal with
We
later.
have not spoken about this topic in exec session, so if I came across as indicating that, I mean all the other business of the district that we are allowed and we do speak about in exec session that absolutely has underlying meaning and understanding that new board members need to know so they can put this in context.
Correct. And, what I'd like to do is, because I hesitate to speak now, I do want to let Chuck, I wanted to go down the line and let the people ask questions.
Before Chuck goes, I started to ask Michelle to summarize some of the financials.
Oh, yeah, please,
which was one
Michelle.
of Lydia's questions.
You were
if I
so
go
ready
back
with
to-
your numbers.
Michelle was right, so I go back to Michelle, just summarize some of that discussion we had on June 4th with PFM.
So if you were at the Finance Committee meeting on June 4th, you remembered that there was actually 2 presentations in one that were given by Zach Williard. One was in regards to potential bond refundings, and then in the back section, starting about midway through, there was some options for consideration in the event that the district wanted to incur some additional debt. And if you take a look at those pages and you begin with page 6 of that document, it talks a little bit about what our debt limit is, what our outstanding principal is, and things like that. And currently, our legal debt our debt limit is just over $207 million. And we have outstanding principal of just under $84 million. So that leaves us with the remaining borrowing capacity of $123,500,000. So,
And you're not allowed to spend it all on this project. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You know, not that anyone would recommend that we go up to our maximum capacity, but just to let you know that there is room for additional borrowing if the district wanted to. Ken had asked about what the percentage of our budget is for our debt. Currently, the 2020 or 1920 budget includes 7.15% for debt payments. Actually, what we will spend in this year is 6.47%, because we've done many bond refundings, and as we've refunded bonds, we've experienced a savings. The average for districts, somewhere between 10 and 15%, so we have a very low percentage of debt included in our budget. Ken also asked if we did a $10 million borrowing, what would we expect to pay in additional debt service? That would be about $295,000 additional each year, bringing our debt to 6.67% of our budget. At $20 million, it would be about $600,000, or 6.9% of our budget. And at $30 million, it would be about $900,000, or 7.26% of our debt. Did I miss anything, Ken?
And we've refinanced so much bonds in the last at least 4 years that I've been on the board, and I know you've been doing it before that, that our debt service has actually gone down more than if we borrowed the $30 million.
The debt service has gone down. We continue to look at bond refunding opportunities, remembering those are not new debt dollars, they're
Right.
existing debt dollars that we're refunding. We're actually doing another one on Thursday of this
Yeah.
week. So that will be 3 that we've done in the last about 2.5 months.
Yeah, because I've been investment banking for 22 years and just listening to my dad ramble on about interest rates and educating me about financial issues since I was a kid, and interest rates aren't going to get much lower than this, especially since when they were refunding bonds back in the 80s and 90s, interest rates were 8 times what we're paying, 5 times what we're paying. So money is, I mean, I know $30 million, and the old joke Republicans were put on earth for one purpose, to cut taxes. But to do a project like this where nothing's been done, I mean, the Yankee Field concrete bleachers are so old that they were put in before my brother was a freshman in high school at Radnor. And now it's time to rebuild things. They say the lifetime of infrastructure is like 30 years, 40 years. Well, we're there. I mean, look around Radnor. They're replacing every gas line, water line. Then they're going to repave the roads, and 2 years from now, they're going to dig all those roads up again to redo all our 70-year-old sewers. So now's the time to replace the other half of the school that they didn't do in 95. And I know I'm out of turn as we go down the line, but the money's so cheap right now that we'd be stupid not to do this, or you all who are coming on the board. That's mine.
Just to wrap up that discussion, we did talk when we invited PFM in June. It was before we set our priority project, but even at that time, we had mentioned to them that we will be setting a priority project, that we do need to look at our facilities district-wide. So we do have a priority project goal this year to look at the feasibility of all of our buildings and to make sure that we are developing by the spring that 5, 10, 15, 20-year, 25, 30-year projection for our buildings, also based on enrollment. So we are taking that into account and are thinking about that priority project as we look at this piece as well.
If I could follow up, I'm sorry. If I could follow up with a question that came up earlier about the pool, just to give some details as to exactly what's encompassed in that dollar figure. It includes new balance tanks and regenerative media systems, new water chemistry UV system, including tablet chlorination, replastering the pool interior, new flooring, refurbishing the diving stand and board, new starting platforms, additional depth markers and miscellaneous items that need to be done, new automatic water leveling control, and then a new timing system conduit infrastructure, which has been rotting away. So there are several things that may not have been apparent on the PowerPoint that are included in that dollar figure for the pool.
Mr. Madden, are you ready? Okay, great.
Yes, I was actually late. I will share some wisdom here. Since I was elected in 1995, and we didn't do a very good job, supposedly, with the project that was in 1995, and I'll share this with the new board people coming in. Hang on, because this is a big project, and we were doing the renovation of the high school at that time. And you or we need to depend on the people that are out there. Put together a team here to look at what we need to do. That's my one bit of wisdom that I have. I'm running very low on it right now. But what I would recommend is that we look into the flexibility of the project. We look into staging, which possibly could allow us to look into the bleacher piece in the front end of the project rather than the back end. Make sure it doesn't interfere with any kind of landscaping we're going to have to do in the future, or any kind of development we're going to have to do with the locker rooms and things like that. I would also make sure that we jump on the road access right away, because if you do not get that, then you're not going to be able to move the facility building to where you may want to move it, which then would increase the classrooms. And if you can't get that, which I hope you do, it's very close to the exit and entrance of the Blue Route on one side. It goes through wetlands on the other side. We have an emergency road opening permit or something like that that we have right now for our emergency vehicles. So I would recommend that you look at that immediately before you get too far down the road and find out that PennDOT, which takes a long time to make decisions, decides against us. So I would move in that direction right away. And the flexibility, the staging, and how you do progress, it's up to you guys now. God bless.
Amy, do you have questions, comments? Sure. Okay.
So again, I want to thank everybody for the presentation. I know how much work has gone into it, and it's incredibly helpful, and I do think that it's important that this conversation be ongoing, regardless of who's on the board today versus next month. I think it's important, if we want to be able to get some traction with community awareness of this, it's important to keep talking about it. So I appreciate your time tonight to come out and do that, and for everybody else who's here because they care about this project. Whether they're in support or not, you're interested enough to be here tonight at 9:30. So this is one of our longer board meetings in a while. Well, in a while, but it's time well spent. I see this project a little bit differently in terms of its title. I was struggling a little bit all along. I think I'd maybe mentioned this to Susan or Ken about it being called an RHS Athletics Infrastructure Project. That seemed more comprehensive, I think, from the initial title. But I'm thinking about this differently, especially on the heels of the PowerPoint that we got earlier. And I see it as a Radnor Township School District, not just high school, student and community wellness infrastructure project. And those words are really deliberate to me because it's about our whole district. I don't think that it's just isolated to the high school, because I know that there are students from other schools who use these fields. It's not just the high school students. I use the word community because I know that there are many members of our community, not only who use the fields, but who come to our fields and come to our facilities all across Radnor. And I'd really like it reflected that this is something that is meant to benefit them. This is not just about our high school student athletes, although they're obviously a very big part of it. And I use the word wellness because we actually have for the second year now, been undergoing a student wellness study. It's one of our board-approved goals. We're in the second year of it. And I like to personally make sure that we do as much collaborative work as possible. Having siloed projects potentially concerns me. There really is no such thing in my mind, particularly in the field of education, that is in silo anymore. Everything has something to do with everything else. So we have a student wellness program, a study ongoing, and I'd really love if there's some way as we do this to reinforce some of our goals and recommendations that'll be coming out of the wellness study to be incorporated into aspects of this project. And I think that they are, but maybe they just haven't been explicitly linked yet. But since one of the areas of focus for the student wellness study is physical health, this is a way to accomplish, I don't know what those recommendations will be, none of us do because the study isn't over. But because one of the major scopes of the Student Wellness Project is physical wellness, I can imagine there'll be things that'll be coming out as recommendations that will entail fitness. So I hope that we can think about this going forward as we present this to our community, that we are actually marrying recommendations from one goal we've set with an initiative elsewhere. And then I use the word infrastructure because another one of our district priority projects is to do a long-term facilities plan that is designed to incorporate enrollment, programmatic needs, and the use of our facilities. So again, that's something that should be, I feel, explicitly linked in terms of goals and agendas as this is presented to our community. This is not a one-off. This is really something that this project is one aspect of two things we as a board already unanimously approved that we do, that our administration does work on this year. So that's what I really wanted to put out there as food for thought. You know, I come at things sometimes from a marketing lens. It's an occupational hazard. But thinking about how this might be something we talk about as a community, that would be my recommendation. And in terms of the finances of it, I also wanted to put out there the idea that we look at this also potentially in terms of a more economical way to address what we would be doing anyway. I took a quick look at our May of 2019 tentative capital improvement sketches, and I don't know if these how accurate these numbers are. But just at doing some really quick scratch math, it looks like over the course of 2021, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2022-23, if I'm reading this right, we have almost $2 million allocated to remediation of some of the facilities we're talking about here. And I'm concerned about throwing good money after bad. So granted, $2 million in repairs is not the same thing as a $28 million project, but I think it's something to be mindful of. How will this improve or alleviate any potential burden on us in terms of ongoing maintenance that we're going to have to do for facilities that is like putting a Band-Aid on something that will just keep being a financial obligation on our part? I don't know the answer to that, but again, that's just something to think about, is not unlike what we did with our technology infrastructure, our technology project, where we were getting rid of we were investing in new technology, but at the same time we were incurring savings because we were getting rid of machines that were draining us in terms of repairs and upgrades we needed on those. So that would just be a suggestion also, is how can we what savings are we realizing by doing this? I've got to believe we are, and they even go beyond maybe the obvious, which is maintenance on the facilities. It could be if we're going even deeper into the infrastructure in terms of our runoff, water runoff. Are we spending money, having landscaping money, or anything else that we need to do to fix problems that actually will be, that are, again, are Band-Aid solutions and will be more integrally solved by doing this project? So that would just be something I'd encourage you perhaps to think about. I also, in terms of the long-term facilities plan, the 30 years was mentioned earlier about how this is going to take care of things for 30 years. I'd really love to see that detailed. I think that's important to know what this alleviates for us and where we're going to be in 30 years. Have this really strategically planned out. Obviously, not everything is going to last for 30 years. Some things might last for 50 years, but maybe it's with fidelity to this priority project of a long-term facilities plan, we can have some better idea of just where we're going to be with these things in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years than we have been, because we haven't attended to this. Because something got us into this situation in the first place. And I think we'd all feel better knowing that we're not going to get into this place again anytime soon. Am I asking too many questions? Or okay, just want to make sure. And then again, the soft costs. I would really love to know a little bit more about what's involved in the soft costs, because I heard concern on this board about, I don't want to go forward necessarily and authorize something in 6 weeks, but I could be wrong, but I don't think we're authorizing anything in 6 weeks that's of any significant cost, right? We just need to be able to move this initiative forward to have more information in order to come at some point to a final decision, which is, I guess, when you receive bids, not even go out to bids. So we're a ways away from making any real financial commitment to this, but in order to continue to do our due diligence, is it true that we are, what can you describe what that would be and what kind of soft cost that would be, let's say, in the next 6 weeks or 2 months?
Sure, you're absolutely right. You're not committing to any dollar necessarily figured tonight. That's going to be when you have the bids come back in, you'll be able to see exactly what the project comes in at. And depending upon how we position the bid documents, we could add alternates to give the board the flexibility then to say, yes, we need to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, but we don't want to do LMNOP type of thing. So we certainly could do that. There would be certain costs associated with Steve and his work to get us to that point. I can certainly ask him to touch base on that. Do you want to comment on that for a second or not?
Sure. Those phases that I described briefly in the presentation and the schedule, each of those can be broken down as a percentage of the overall fee, and that's essentially how we bill it anyway. So yes, you're making incremental commitments, us and our consultants, and then making, there's permit fees associated with making submissions to authorities that would be, right. But as if you think of the entire project cost as a pie, the little sliver that's associated with, of that $28 million, that's associated with advancing things between now and, say, April is a very small fraction of that.
The other thing I would say to you is with regards to fitness and wellness focus, can't agree with you more that when I looked at this, came into this 9 months ago, I looked at this as just a high school project, but I quickly realized that this is much more than that. And it's not just our Radnor school district students, but we have so many students that come in from the private schools. So there's still Radnor residents that come in to use our facilities, and they too would benefit from this. So it's not just Radnor students, it's students within Radnor Township, no matter where they are. And you're absolutely right with the fitness and wellness. We probably want to make sure that we're moving this together. I was astounded to learn that we have some of our teams that have to pay to go to a fitness club because we can't provide facilities for them. That just was something I was not familiar with. So I think moving forward, that's the idea, is to get people back on the campus to do what we need to do here. We have had many conversations in our committee about the size of the fitness room. We said, well, if we build it this big, should we be looking at building it more, having some flexibility moving it forward type of things? So we are looking at that, and that's further discussions. I think regarding the strategic plan for 30 years, there are several things that we will not need to do maintenance on within the first 5 years, but you certainly will have a life cycle analysis done of whatever we're doing. So we know that within 10 years, we'll need to be doing A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. Again, moving forward, so you know what that figures might be and what that work might be, so we know and the board can make that decision moving forward. I think with regards to the soft costs, There's some costs in there that are going to be at the end, and whether or not we consider them soft costs or we buy them out of general fund, for example, some of the equipment, or if there's other avenues for us to be able to obtain that equipment, those would not obviously not factor into the soft cost moving forward. But to be prudent, Steve has to go ahead and let us know what the whole project costs, as if you're funding it at 100%. Does that help you?
Yes, yes. But I, instead of just costs, I would also, again, encourage you to incorporate savings, because you just mentioned another one, which is that our students have the burden of going to subsidize their own fitness. That is, to me, a cost savings potentially we can provide. Obviously, they're not spending $28 million on fitness, but there are there are things, just to balance the perspective of this, that we will be saving as a result of this investment. It's an ROI. What is that return on investment, and can we illustrate that in a way that helps our community better understand why this initiative is here in the first place? There are two other quick things I wanted to mention, if I can. The classroom space. I would again encourage you to look really closely at the utilization of that classroom space, because again, in terms of the long-term facilities plan, it's supposed to address enrollment needs, and so that there isn't a separate siloed look at enrollment needs and then there's an athletics consideration over here. If this is potentially a project that's going to incorporate classroom space, what are going to be our classroom needs? I mean, we may not need a classroom. We might need a 22nd century type of learning space. So let's really think, if we're going to have extra space for student learning, what should that space look like? What are those numbers? Who is that going to need to accommodate? Can that potentially help us maybe at the elementary level? You know, like I said, everything for me is interconnected. We have a whole list of things, but they really could just be one because they're connected to one another. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that in terms of community outreach, I didn't receive because I don't live there, but I do know that Lower Merion, who is looking at changing its school start times and has a far bigger community to cover than we do here in Radnor based on population and geography, sent out something to its community, every taxpayer, I think, in the district, making the case for why they are pursuing their school start time change initiative. So just food for thought. If you really want to reach out to the community, I mean, we could get really creative. I think it's important to engage as many members of the community as possible. And that includes some of the people who are regularly using our campus, and not just for athletics. I think that, you know, for example, senior citizens, if they can more easily get to our auditorium because we are now ADA compliant so that they can watch a jazz performance or come and see a musical or do anything, that might be a reason why they want to support this. So again, there's a whole marketing component to this that I hope is a dedicated part of the strategy. I feel really strongly, again, through this occupational hazard of mine, to think about things through a marketing perspective, that is absolutely a dedicated component of this entire initiative. How do we market this to the people who might potentially be impacted by it and don't even know it yet? So I think that wraps up my comments and questions on it for the time being. But again, thank you for continuing to illuminate this for us the way that you have been, I know, for a long time.
Sarah?
Yeah. So first, I want to thank the committee. I think everyone here appreciates what you've done. I don't know that everyone really understands the hours that you have put in of your personal lives to show up. I mean, this isn't just they've been meeting once a month. These people meet a couple times a month. It's not an hour-long meeting. It goes 3-4 hours. They ask the most detailed questions. If you have concerns about something in this project, probably one of the best people to ask is somebody who's been sitting on this steering committee, especially the ones who've been on this for over a year. They have valiantly pried and prodded and poked and asked all kinds of questions about everything. And it's really, really exciting to see members of the community who are that engaged. The members of the swim team community who came out tonight, I hope you'll offer, this steering committee isn't going away. If this project continues, we need that input. You know, Mike has given the input he can, and the committee has asked him to stay. I've asked him to stay. I think Mrs. Stern has asked him to stay, but he may just bail on us. I hope not.
You have to ask my wife.
Can I get her number? But the reality is, you all, I mean, this presentation barely scratches the surface of all that you've considered, all the input. I mean, Mike Friel has gotten input from all the coaches, I mean, everybody who's on that committee has brought input from their community, the people they've spoken to. It's probably true that that not all the township knows about this, but anybody who's had to spend more than 10 minutes with me in the last couple months has heard about it, probably ad nauseum, and at this point just said, vote for it so I can stop listening to it. I'm very passionate about the accessibility that this provides to our campus. I will tell you honestly, Lydia, when you and I ran 2 years ago, I said, I'm not interested in spending more money on just a football field. And if I thought that's what this project was, I would hands down turn my back on it and cross my arms. The track and the field are old, and just by course of standard replacement are due to be replaced. But this is about adding to and contributing to our community. It's not just about the high school, it's not just about the athletes, it's about all of the people who use our facility on a regular basis. Long before I had kids at the high school, I was at the high school on a regular basis. Scared as all get out that I was going to hit somebody trying to drive around that curve, that I was going to hit a kid who was cutting across the street someplace unsafe. I mean, these and very, very in-depth conversations where we're pointing to the road and saying, well, where do people cross? What's the natural place to put this? How do we solve this terrible drop-off line problem? How do we convince parents this is the safest place to leave their child? Those conversations have been had. I promise you, this is a committee of people who have cared. When you asked about ramps versus elevators, Lydia, the original proposal from our architect actually did just have an elevator down to the field. And the members of our community who are more aware of ADA accessibility than the rest of us might be said no. I mean, it was Lucy's point this evening. She said it so well. Don't just give us a way to get there because we need some kind of accessibility, some kind of separate access. Make it the way we get there. Don't tell us we have to go in a separate entrance and that's good enough. Make it part of the standard. If you go to the stadium, you know, Citizens Bank Park, they don't have a set of stairs for people who can use stairs and a set of ramps for people who have a wheelchair or a walker. They just send us all up and down ramps. There are supplemental elevators. I think there are potential spaces you could add a supplemental elevator, for example, in the field house. But I think that this committee also, believe it or not, was trying very hard to be responsible with taxpayer money. It's their money. They're all paying taxes here too. And they really were trying to look for the most responsible use of taxpayer dollars in Radnor that will last us a long time. I mean, every so often you're going to have an infrastructure project. That's why we called it an infrastructure project. We weren't just putting in new bleachers and repaving the field. It all needs to be done for safety purposes. I'm going to confess, and I think I'll save a lot of these questions maybe for our next steering committee meeting. I had a lot of extra little questions well, one thing I wanted to point out actually, that extra road, and I think this whole team is very aware of the challenges of putting in an extra road and the parking along the wetlands. We had long conversations about whether that's a good idea and whether it works. But one of the key pieces that does is it's a safety issue, right? We have, after school, for sports, other teams' buses coming around that loop behind the cafeteria, where you have student drivers and kids crossing and getting picked up and running down to the field. And that creates a lot of traffic nightmares, but also real safety concerns. So the idea of having this outer loop, or this outer roadway, would be that visiting buses would go there. And we're not just talking nighttime football games. We're talking every day after school when there are sporting events. The soccer buses go there. Other teams' buses would go over there. We're really trying to think very holistically about the property. In an ideal world, we would wait until we're addressing the district goal of looking at the capital plan for all the district properties for the next 20 years. every month, I mean, this committee was pushing and pushing, why can't we vote in November? Why can't the board vote in November? Because every month we delay this is at least another month till it's done, and potentially an extra quarter or half a year, because you miss seasonal opportunities to get work done. You miss seasonal opportunities to have bidding done. And trust me, we have a very capable architect, and Hugh from ELA is also very capable. He isn't saying, oh, this has to get done all at once. We are looking very carefully, we talk about this in the steering committee, how could this be staged? How could we get this done for 2021 for the big anniversary LM field game? How could we get this part done so that the kids have access to this? Mark is looking at a lot of the internal pieces. How can we get this done with internal resources, with our own staff, so that we don't have to take out bonds and spend a lot of money for all this? So I think, this team was trying very hard to give you a lot of information, and they know getting it all in one night is like drinking from a water hose. But there's a lot more, and I encourage you to ask those questions and sit and wait for the answers. I think I voiced it at the steering committee. I think the steering committee is aware. I'm not sure that I would, as an initial move, plan to move the maintenance shed right away. I do think there's absolutely space that could be better utilized where maintenance is currently, and it could be used for classrooms, it could be used for expansion of the cafeteria, kind of as we see what enrollment issues we've got at the high school. Maybe there's a better place to put the maintenance facility. Maybe there's a better long-term plan. And I think this team knows this, but they wanted to give you the optimum proposal. So, I mean, if it were me and I had to vote on this right now, I would say, don't do the maintenance move, and I approve the rest of it. I mean, that's really how I feel about it. I'm not making a motion. I'll let you do that. There was one other thing. I also, there are lots of little things. Amy, you asked about things that would be improvements that they didn't talk about. One of them we've talked about with the Radnor Aquatic Club, and we're looking at the pool and their usage of it. And one of the expenses that the district has, I don't know if any of you know this, in order to heat that pool, we have to run the whole boiler for the entire building, because nobody ever put in a separate heating unit for the pool. That is financially ridiculous, and it's environmentally unsound, right? That's not how we should be doing things in Radnor. Is that an exciting thing to put on a PowerPoint? No. So I'm sure Steve Barron said, I'm not going to bother the board with that. But that is part of the cost. I know, but Mark. So, I mean, there are a lot of those little things built into this. There is a way, Lydia, to prioritize portions of it that would get to the ADA accessibility more rapidly. But the reality is we have to deal with any permits we have to get. And permitting takes time. We have to get the commissioners to get on board and give us the permits we need, the county, PennDOT. But we don't have to wait till we get PennDOT approval, if ever, on this piece to do the other pieces. So I don't assume that this committee hasn't thought about that. They're on top of it. I'm really, really impressed with them. And I think that, I really give kudos to Mike for the leadership he's shown on the steering committee, keeping them in line, keeping them apprised of concerns board members would have, keeping them apprised of concerns he knows other community members have had. And I think that, I give him a lot of credit for the foresight and the forward thinking that he's had in leading this group to coming to a project proposal like this.
Mr. Miller?
Well, I'm speechless. Oh, stop laughing. Yeah, I know, really. It's like usually I follow Chuck and just go, oh, ditto. But now I get to follow you and go, ditto. Yeah, actually, I don't really have much more to add about that, because I think I just think that all the questions we have, Sue will answer. Just kidding. No, I actually really don't have much more to add than that. One, because, this is it for me. Two, because I really do believe the steering committee can answer most of these questions more eloquently than I can, especially our esteemed Mr. Bajukis and Mr. Brooks over there, and our architect, and Ken, and Michelle can answer all your financial questions way more nicely than I will. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this, especially as we're approaching 9:56 by my clock. So, but,
Do you want to say more about the bonds?
let's say more about the bonds. Yes, you should do them. You should issue 3 bonds under $10 million each so that they're bank qualified, because the debt service on $30 million would be less than $1 million a year. We've refinanced so many bonds just in the last 6 years that if you borrow the $30 million, our debt service wouldn't even be back to where it was 6 years ago. So it's really, I mean, as an investment banker, it's really kind of like a no-brainer to do this kind of thing, to do it all once, to do it correctly, so that, you know, the next board isn't here in 20 years. And it's not that you guys did it wrong in '95, Chuck. It's just, I mean, you all made a conscious decision back then. It was $42 million project or something like that. It was either, one of these buildings was.
It was 35.
Yeah, so I mean, you obviously made a decision not to.
Come in, this goes away.
Yeah.
When you come into it as a new one.
Right. I mean, well, you mean.
They
They obviously made a decision back then, and there were reasons for it. And I mean, nobody said, you know, I graduated 2 years earlier, so I stopped paying attention because I was in college paying attention to, you know, swimming for college and trying not to fail out at the same time, which is harder than it seemed. And, you know, so they made a decision. You can see it if you look at an aerial photograph of the high school. There's a white flashing around the new part, and the roof's older on the older part that they didn't do. I mean, there was reasons for it. I mean, there's sound reasons back then, but now it's time to pay the piper. We got to fix things that haven't been fixed since, you know, what are the bleachers 55 years old at Prevo, something like that. I mean, it predates even when Mark and Chuck were here.
As far as we can tell, Wayne Ironworks put them in. Wayne Ironworks went out of business in 1965.
Right. So, I mean, it's things like that. And now it's time, you know, as I said earlier, we're replacing sewer lines, gas lines, water lines all over the town. It's, you know, sorry. It's time to replace half of the high school that everyone in the community does it. I mean, when I played football for Radnor, we had a grass field. When I coached my daughters playing Radnor soccer on Prevost, you know, now it's turf, and the turf field's got to be replaced. You know, it's at the end of its useful life. The track's at the end of its useful life. The bleachers are nearing their end of their structural life. That's why this whole project started. And then the Henkel family came to us and made us aware. And then Katie Sampson came to us and made us aware of the challenges. Because honestly, until you hear from people and start looking around, I mean, I've told your father this, Chris, that, you know, I went to a middle school lacrosse game for my 8th grader last year. There's no way for anybody in a wheelchair to watch a game there. I mean, the closest you can get is a basketball court, but the basketball court you can't really get to, and when you're there, you're 25, 30 yards from the sideline. So there's no even real way for people in chairs to watch a lacrosse game there, or anything there. So this is about making this correct for everybody. I know I wasn't going to say much, but, you know, here we are. The ramps issue versus the elevators versus the stairs, you know, it's like you said, you go to any stadium. I mean, Beaver Stadium, you go there, not a Penn State guy, by the way, but you go to Beaver Stadium, there's ramps everywhere. You know, it's just a more efficient way to move things. You can plow them, as Mr. Brooks said earlier. It moves people quicker, faster, and as Mr. Henkel said once, if you make areas, you don't want to make ADA viewing areas that are away from everyone else. You want to make them a part of everyone else. You want to make it where people want to go, not just where they have to go to watch it. You know, like our current ADA viewing area is off on the curb, up the top of the hill, curve. Under the trees, yeah, you know. And it's, if you're in a chair, the chain link fence bar is right at your eye level, you know. So you want to make the ADA viewing areas just the viewing areas that just happen to be accessible for everyone. And this is the way to do it right. Now, I know it's $28 million, which when they came back to us and presented us that at the steering committee, there was, what, 3-4 minutes of just silence. I think you could hear everybody's pulses not going, because we were all kind of like, oh my God, you know. And at that point, I don't think the aquatic study had been fully done yet, you know, either. So it's like, oh great, now let's talk about the pool too. So I just think this is a chance for you all, the 5 of you plus the 4 that are coming on, to do this correctly. And who knows, maybe I'll still be on the committee and you'll see me and I'll get to torture Jeff and Sue. So.
The next committee meeting is going to be at your house, so yeah, you'll be there.
Open bar.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you for all your work. We as a board, as a district, have developed a kind of a protocol for really big, important initiatives. We've set kind of what we feel is the process, which is begin to learn there's a need. People come and advocate for a need. And then Ken puts together a steering committee. And we task that steering committee with a lot of work. We ask you to go out and do a lot of digging, do a lot of work. Our sleep initiative, you know, our later start time, our sleep, adolescent sleep needs is one of our more recent examples of that. And every time they came to us, we said thank you, and then we said, now go back and do some more work. You know, and so I think probably we're going to say the same thing tonight. Go back and do some more work, and thank you in advance for that. Thank you, Sarah and Mike. And Mike, I do hope you stay on the committee. You add tremendous value and voice to it. But you know, once we have an initiative, a recommendation, then it's our board and our district's responsibility to communicate that well. And you know, to some other board members' point, you know, we need to make sure we get the word out there and do the best job we can to communicate this. I can't think of any better job that you as a committee could have done in expressing for me personally, but to our board, the needs that are here. You know, you've come and articulated our accessibility needs. You've come and articulated some really, you know, desperately needed infrastructure improvements. And you've come at it from a very articulate way. You know, earlier a board member made mention of we really need to be thinking about the whole education of our children. And you know, for some people that would mean not doing something like this. For me, it screams, of course we should be doing something like this. Our experience, our students' experience now is profoundly different from when the pool was built in 1971 and from when the high school was renovated back in 1999 or 96 to 99. And by the way, they spent $35 million back in 1999. So it was a serious and significant chunk of money that our community got behind 20 years ago. And that's what we're going to be asking, you know, our community to do in the near future, regardless of if we do everything or not. We're talking about a significant amount of money. But we're also talking about recognizing that our students are completely different than they were. You know, the member of the audience that came forward and talked about the swimming pool from 1971 and how profoundly changed, you know, different our swimmers and our swimming program here in Radnor is than it was 47 years ago, 48 years ago. So this project, it recognizes all of those things. Our need to focus on wellness and fitness, and you know, the fact that we have our students in our club sports having to go out and, you know, spend money. These families are spending money for their training outside of our high school. We have to address these things. So I really appreciate you coming from it, from all those ways, and it will be our responsibility as a district to make sure we promote this as well as possible. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the responsibility of 9 of us to vote on what we feel is best at this point in time for the community, for the students. The other thing about our high school that I think has really profoundly changed in the last, I'd say, 20 years is that our high school is not just a high school for our high school students. For, you know, better or worse, our high school is utilized as a community resource. It's in use virtually 20 hours a day, almost 365 days a year, whether it's the sports, whether it's indoor sports, outdoor sports, whether it's the, you know, band tournaments that, you know, we had an indoor color guard tournament a couple of years ago. We're going to be hosting one for the band this coming year. I mean, we utilize this property as if it is the community resource, the community center. And so things like traffic and ADA accessibility are particularly important. And that does translate to significant dollars to be invested, but it's significant return for the whole community. That's how I view it. With regard to how we pay for it, I am very proud that, Mike and Sarah and Patty and I said 5-6 months ago to the district, hey, we need to start talking about this. If we're going to if we're going to think about spending a large chunk of money, we better be prepared to answer the question, how? We answered why. You guys have answered why. Tonight is the what. And 6 months ago, we started thinking about the how. And we have been extraordinarily fortunate in the last 6 years with bond refinancing in our district. That we have an opportunity here to use the economics that exist right now to our advantage, to pay for a project. I believe firmly, Mike and I have agreed on this from day one, that if you're going to build an infrastructure project that you expect to last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you should be doing that with bond money, and that, pay for it over time. And if we have the opportunity to do that as inexpensively as we have it right now, and I can't remember if Michelle mentioned wraparound debt, but one of the structures that we talked about at the Finance Council is that because we have the fortune of some of our bonds retiring in 2035, we have a way to finance a significant amount of money that puts some of the payments up front now, but pushes a lot of it to the end of the bond when other bonds will be done paying for them, so that the actual impact on our budget is minimized in terms of our out-of-pocket expenses in any given cycle. So a lot of thought has been put into these things, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that regardless of how we vote on this, whether we move forward tonight, whether we move forward in 6 weeks, 2 months, at whatever point we move forward, it has been done with it. I stand by the tremendous amount of work and forethought and and foresight that's been given to this. And I hope we are all proud of that, because we have all worked together, despite some of our individual differences about the scope of this project. We have found areas where we believe, common ground, and we have differences. That's kind of been our style, and we agree to disagree politely, and then we take a vote and we move on. So I have every expectation that that is how this project will move forward. We will be moving forward with something. I've listened to my fellow board members tonight, and I hear the support for something in concept, and and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of it, and I'm grateful to you. Some of the specific things that I would like to point out have to do with. I am daunted by $28 million. I don't think there's anybody up here who isn't daunted by the number $28 million. I have some specific concerns around the access drive and the maintenance building. I spent 8 years on the Planning Commission, so some of this I view through a very different lens. And I think we will have some significant challenges with getting occupancy permits from the highway. I have some pretty significant concerns around impervious coverage, and so that is a piece that I would really, I'm very glad that we can segment that and take a little bit more time to look at that. I am grateful that some of the classroom space that you're proposing, some of the repurposing of some space and some of the new building space that you're considering, we need to be looking at it with an eye toward flexibility. Traditional classroom space might not be how we want to ultimately use some of the space that you're proposing, making some changes to. I'm concerned our fitness room is not large enough. I'm looking at I can't believe we've been existing with 1,700 square feet of a fitness room. I just can't even, I don't know how you did that, Mr. Friel. I just don't. And I'm concerned it almost. Work out much. I'm concerned it's. Listen, I'm the pot, and so I speak not of of exercise, okay? But I'm not sure that I even think 2.5 times size is going to be enough when I am aware of how many teams have to practice off-site, off-campus. So I'm glad that there's space nearby that maybe could be used flexibly in that regard. I absolutely love, thank you, Steve, that you showed us the visual of what that sloping ramp looked like near the loop. I was having a very difficult time picturing that. And it looks inviting. Lucy, I cannot thank you enough for your comment about that, and really trying to have us keep in mind that people should never feel like they're separated and segmented because they have different abilities. And I can completely, it reminded me of Epcot, and everybody walks in the big entrance at Epcot. It's a low, slow grade and a long, slow grade. I'm looking forward to, Mark, to seeing I know we just hired, or we made arrangements to hire we're getting the engineered plans of the property. I'm looking forward to taking a look at our existing impervious, our existing setbacks, and all of that, because I think it's going to be, I'm concerned about that, and I'm holding in check some of my feelings on some of the build-outs, because I don't know where our impervious sits right now. And I do have a little bit of feedback, because I know this plan is going to go public, and I would want it to make sure that it's readily digestible by people. On page 14, when we're talking about the potential project schedule, the critical path components make sense to me, but I'm wondering if the column to the right doesn't need a title. Are those the anticipated start dates or the anticipated completion date on page 14?
Completion.
Thank you. So I think that we're going to want to add that to the top of page 14. And I would really, again, from my time on Planning Commission, I would really, really hope that we could get through some land development plans in fewer than 10 months. I'm like, it's called, or what's the word? I'm struggling for it. It's by right. We want, setbacks and impervious that are as close to by right as possible to smooth our permitting process. I do hope that you can take another look at this and refine, are there some paths forward here that if we phased some projects would get us our bleachers and our retaining wall more quickly? Jeff, I think you're correct. I think there's a certain amount of design phase and permitting process that is, whether we're doing just the walls and just the bleachers or a whole lot more, it won't profoundly change that, but I wouldn't mind hearing confirmation about that. And I really do hope that some of the sports teams, the swim team in particular that we heard from tonight, I knew that we were going to hear further information, that there was a bit more planned in that piece than perhaps was indicated on the plan. So to the extent that we can give more information so that anyone looking at this understands that we are talking about a more comprehensive and, improvement to the natatorium area. We don't want this to be 50 pages, but are there ways to make this user-friendly for anyone picking this up to understand that this is going to make some significant improvements to that area, which has been long neglected, the pool area. And let me see. And finally, I know Mrs. Booker had to go. She was, pretty honest about that. Part of the reason that I was encouraging us to do this tonight was out of respect for the timeline that was submitted months ago, but it was also, honestly, out of respect for Mike Miller. This is his last board meeting tonight. This is an important thing he's worked over a year on, and I feel like it was the right thing to do to have this here tonight so that you could be participating and help run this and be a part of the conversation up here as a board member. You have worked too darn hard and too darn long for this to have not been on an agenda tonight for you. So if that's a criticism that I take at some later point, why did we put this on here tonight? There's the reason, folks. You can like it or lump it. That's my reason, for no other. And this board has spent over a year listening to it. So I think it was a very valid for me that the 9 of us who have heard this have an opportunity to vet it. And now it will be the job of 4 new board members to get up to speed.
So
I don't,
with that, could I jump in then?
Sure, absolutely. That's really all I had to say about it.
Okay. So we need to talk about then what are those next steps. Sure. And one of the things we talked about with the steering committee is we understand that the board needs time to digest. The board hasn't had an opportunity to be at we've had 2 board members at the steering committee. It's time to digest all of this as you're seeing it. So I would recommend, and we can talk offline, leadership, but that we look at December 10th, looking at our schedule coming up in December, that we could create a meeting in December 10th. whether it's a full board of the facilities, and to come back and continue this discussion on December 10th. I obviously would have to talk to our architect to make sure he's available on December 10th to keep this moving forward. At this point, what needs to happen in December, January, the next step is the board needs to approve, what needs to approve is we need to authorize our architect to develop the drawings, to prepare them so that they can go out to bid, so they can start to seek the township approvals, so we can find out, what aspects we need to adjust and those pieces. And then prepare the documents to go out to bid. Once it goes out to bid, then the board, once we receive those bids, is where there is a financial commitment that is made. So that is down the road. So we won't be necessarily moving forward between now and December 10th with any additional drawings, except to, I think, I tried to take some notes, some areas between now and December 10th that maybe we can demonstrate a little bit more, give a little bit more explanation for, possibly some additional, additional drawings to just, elaborate this is how this space, or enlarging, this is how this team room would be used, or this areas would be used. I think, Sarah and Mike and everyone has articulated so well tonight that, this committee went through and really tore apart how each one of the different options were connected to one another when we looked at accessibility. And when you pull away one piece, the only piece that I think the board is seeing that could be possibly pulled away, and that's we can talk about December 10th, and administratively, we're comfortable with that as well, is that access drive. There's a lot of questions about that access drive and moving maintenance. That is something that we could easily, as a district, look at as part of that larger priority project to look at our capital improvements. So that is something we can talk about pulling away, using it as an alternate. There are options that we can look at as we move forward, and we discuss that. Keep in mind that as we prepare for a December 10th meeting, last year, when I send out my emails, Mr. Petiti, I know we have 3,800 roughly students. That represents, I know, more than 3,800 emails that we're sending out. The emails we have for our community, I don't have all of our community's emails, but all of our families and our students in the community. Last year, several times, we emailed our entire community with individual invite that we're having public meetings to talk about our facilities. We had 2 different evenings where we invited everyone to come in and give us feedback. When we had the meeting in April, we again reached out to our community that we have access to say, come to this meeting in April where the feasibility study would be presented. Again, this past Friday, I sent out another email letting people know that we are discussing this. So if a piece of this is looking at more community outreach, a mailer to non-parents, those pieces, that's something that between now and December 10th, we need to start to discuss. So I think what we need to prepare for the conversation is December 10th are what are those things that we need answers to? What are those things that the board, and I'm speaking to our current board, I'm speaking to our new board, they've been here in the audience. We will provide tours between now and December 10th for all sitting board members and the new board members as well. We will also provide an opportunity. I know I think it was, we have been having all these conversations in public, and I know that our new board members have been following this very closely, so I am not at all concerned about getting them up to speed with this project and where we are from their commitment to this already, the commitment to following along and understanding. So I had asked board members between now and December 10th, if we're going to have this meeting, to really think about what are those pieces, as Mrs. Stern talked about, Susan, you talked about our process, and we'll go back and refine what are those pieces that we are looking for after December 10th for that steering committee to tackle and look at, because that next step we're looking for is we're looking for that approval to continue to engage our architect to actually design more, specifications that we can then go out to bid. So that's a several-month process. And then it's the going out to bid is when there's actually a vote for committing dollars to this project. If we want to have PFM financial advisors with us on December 10th, we could look to have them there as well. I'm looking at Michelle. We could reach out to them and see if they're available as well. So I would just ask board members, both current and new, between now and December 10th, if we choose to set up this meeting for the 10th, to email me with the questions and the other pieces that we would like to tackle and discuss for that meeting on the 10th.
Well, thank you, Ken. I do want to say, I think our board should expect that, and the public should expect that, this is going to be actively discussed and potentially voted on, different pieces at every upcoming meeting. I heard nothing tonight. I heard nothing tonight that tells me that the majority of the board does not want to move forward with some sort of project. I don't know that we have complete agreement, but I certainly heard a majority of the board speak that way, and to even those people who are to the concern of let's just do what we can as quickly as we can, that really says, well, then we should keep moving forward on a lot of different fronts. So I think December 10th is realistic that we'll plan something. Okay.
So I won't make a motion to approve the $30 million now?
I think that...
Or I was going to make a motion to keep Breslin going, but authorize them before the next meeting, but I think that may be covered under, I don't know why I'm looking at Mark when we're paying you. I had this discussion earlier today with Ken while he was telling me not to start day drinking before the meeting. I was kidding. But
it's a shame my bad ears.
I know. But I know. That's why I sit over here now.
Really good is what I.
But I don't think we need to approve him, the president and ELA sport to keep going until past the 10th. I think you can do that on the 10th, correct?
So we have engaged our architect to, and Steve and Mark, please jump in if I'm not understanding the engagement and the process, but we've engaged them to bring us to this point. So
to get to the 10th and beyond, do we
so
have to
between now and the 10th and other discussions we have on this current design and where we are, Steve will continue to work with us to answer questions. That when I looked and said between now and the 10th, we try to fine tune some of the drawings. Really, we're to the point where we have come up with our design to this point forward. The more detailed designs of getting more into the details of the schematics to go out to bid and for township approvals really is that next phase. Is that next phase of it? So did I explain it well? Is that clear, or is that, please, if I'm wrong, tell me.
That's a fair statement, and you're correct. Bringing us to this point of a recommendation but we have no problem being supportive between now and the 10th, and then helping get to the point of decision.
Mike, let me ask you a question. So Ken, what you just said about moving us forward to the next phase. If we're not as a board prepared to commit to a dollar amount of a project, but we are committed as a board to moving forward in some fashion, is that what you're talking about, Mike? I'm kind of asking that question of you.
Yeah,
because I don't think any of us are ready to commit to a dollar amount tonight.
I think the next phase, and please correct me, is for Breslin and ELA to make more detailed plans to prepare a bid package.
Right. I mean, some of the questions raised tonight would require more investigation, more work than is included in the scope of a study, in terms of having, conversations with authorities, investigating. I know that, although he couldn't be here, I know he has had some initial conversations with folks on some of these questions that were raised. But really, this is the content of a study. And so to go beyond this will require additional design, additional calculations, input of the sort that goes into a schematic design or that next phase.
To go to the next phase, could you separate out? I mean, the one thing I'm hearing from board members tonight is that access road and the moving of maintenance, can that be separated out from other pieces in the bid specifications, or does it need to all be wrapped together as you develop bid specifications?
No, it can be, it would be developed together. In other words, all those questions about impervious coverage and all those sorts of things, we'd be looking at the campus as a whole. So you don't want to look at these things independently, the township, and so everybody would want to see the complete picture. But from a bidding standpoint, a constructability standpoint, yes, it could be broken out as an alternate, so that you can see what the value of that is separate from other components, and then make a decision on that as a standalone piece.
And would the board then not only be able to make a decision on it as an alternate, I mean, we all have a lot of questions about access roads and what would we even be allowed to do. We might find out there are certain things we may not be allowed to do, that would adjust the course as well.
Correct. So once we get to the point of having those conversations and making submissions to the authorities, if something comes up that just makes it a complete no-go, then that's where it ends. Or we adjust. Well, no, if the road slides over this way a little bit, we get a little bit further away from that riparian buffer, and those are all the things that would be investigated moving forward.
So I guess there were a lot of questions asked of you tonight, and one of them was this kind of breaking out pieces. Is there anything you could do to prepare for the December meeting that you need us to authorize you to kind of keep making progress?
Could I jump in for
Or
just a
maybe-
minute?
so
too?
maybe
But
Ken,
can I
is there
just-
something-
I mean,
Go
and
ahead.
Steve, you jump in as well. And that's the piece I'm struggling with to try to, I'm not sure what we're doing that much differently between now and December 10th. That's okay. Time to digest and all of that is fine. But I'm not sure there's anything that we're doing that differently between now and December 10th.
Yeah, I have the same impression. In other words, there's some fine tuning, there's some explanation, but I don't think, I mean, certainly in that time period, we're not going to know anything more about the feasibility of the road than we do now, realistically.
And I would like to see us do tours. I would like to see us, reach out to our aquatic club, the comments in the beginning, to make sure that, that people realize that we have had an aquatic, consultant who came in, that we are redoing that decking on the pool, that we are redoing the locker rooms. There are pieces that we are doing that, that some people didn't maybe realize, and I'm sure there's more that people would like us to do. But I think there'd be some communication between now and December 10th. But to keep this, what keeps this ball moving forward, and it doesn't happen until we make a vote, the next step, the critical step, is dive deeper into the drawings with the schematics to prepare for bids. The actual vote to commit dollars doesn't happen until after the bids. Am I correct? And Michelle, am I correct as our business manager?
You can actually commit dollars as you get closer to the start of the project. You don't necessarily need to wait until bids are awarded. What's important with awarding a bond or taking out a bond is that you have to spend 85% of those dollars within a 3-year term. So you would want to make sure you have a project, but let's say you have some demolition that you want to do before you actually start the construction of the project. You could do a small bond issue to take care of that if you wanted to, but most districts will wait until they have received the bids back, and then they will start to do the bonds, or they'll do it shortly before that, knowing that they're going to move forward with the project.
So one of the things I feel like is our work for the next 2 weeks leading up to December 10th is full-on communications. I mean, Friday was a great start. Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. But what else would you want to be able to do on December 10th? At a meeting? If what I'm hearing him saying is there's not much more he can refine, at least not with regard to document preparation, in the current authorization he has. That's the piece I'm trying to get clarity around.
And I guess that's the piece I'm trying to get clarity around, too.
Thank you.
Where are we directing the administration, you know, between now and December 10th? Are we making you know, a decision just, this was a lot of information to digest? We want to...
I think it's a lot of information, not to cut you off, but I will. It's a
Didn't
lot
hear
of,
you anyway.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, you and my wife, I'm always on the deaf side of you and her. She's deaf too. There's 4 new board members that are coming in. I mean, I see 3 of them out there. Don't see Jeff. I think he's home, smart guy. But they have a lot of information to digest here, to wade through. And I think on the 10th, they can get some of the questions answered that we've asked. You know, Steve and Hugh and Mr. Brooks. And then, I don't want to say present the whole thing again, but, you know, the new board members will have questions about it. The remaining 5 will have some other questions that they've developed, I'm sure. So I think it'd just be kind of a phase 2 of this presentation almost on the 10th. So that would be my recommendation, and have fun with that.
All right, well...
So I would just say then, you know, again, board members and new board members, between now and December 10th, if there's additional questions or things, and steering committee will, I will talk with everyone. Let's make sure everybody's calendars work for December 10th. That's a Tuesday. But we'll look to do the sequel and not necessarily go through the whole presentation, but focus in on what are some of the questions, what are the things that we want to answer as part of the questions. We could look to also the financial components.
Financial, yeah.
See if we could have PFM return again to discuss some of those pieces, and then we can talk about what are those next steps, whether we're looking at a vote on December 10th or when we would like to project when we're looking at a vote to move on the project.
Okay. Are we good? Well, thank you all very, very much, and thank you everyone in the audience for hanging in there. We're going to take a quick break. I don't know.
What I was going to say was,
okay.
Why don't I just copy this?
Guys, do we want to plow
this
through and
computer,
continue on our
and then
agenda?
we can upload it, right?
No, we're not. We're not going. We're going to keep going.
I'm not sure
We're
you're
not
going to be able to. Oh, can you?
We won't.
But I'm not sure. Oops. It's reading it off here. Oh, look at that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I could add that heading that she wants to.
Let's take a quick recess. Sure. Quick recess. Thank you.
Good job, gentlemen. You know, when I said about the access, I'm not against the access. I'm actually in favor of it. My point.
We're going to reconvene. Thank you so much. So again, after the very comprehensive presentation, we're now going to move right into our report from board committees, and the first one will be Curriculum Committee report. Ms. Solomon.
Thank you very much. The Curriculum Committee met. We had a lengthy and productive meeting on November 12th. On your consent agenda tonight are 4 high school clubs and 2 trips, one for the band and for the color guard that were endorsed by the committee. At the meeting, we had an update from each of the building principals about the status of their 2018-2019 goals. The principals also presented their goals for the 2019-2020 school year and answered questions relating to student achievement and priorities for each of their buildings. While the presentation provided was guided by a PowerPoint, each building created a standalone goals document that contained a detailed narrative for reference by the board and the public. A separate handout with points of pride for each school was also, as well as the annual data report, were also provided to offer transparent information to district stakeholders about the status of education in RTSD schools. I have to say, I think that this meeting came at a kind of inconvenient time because there was so much information. It was a 2.5-hour meeting that I feel like at least our new board members need to become acquainted with. And so one of the documents at our meeting was, I call it our data dump, but it's a document that a lot of work goes into. It's the annual report of district data and student achievement. And this has been fine-tuned over several years to sort of capture the things that we were required to show. At one point, we were required to show progress, yearly progress. Then we were required to show growth, a year's worth of growth for students. But also in this is just a whole bunch of data about the school's achievement, high school, graduation information. And so I don't want this information to be lost in the transition between one group to another. So I'm encouraging, and I think we talked about this in our curriculum planning, that I think we need to verse everybody in how to read these and to understand, what these charts mean. We have blue, dark blue, red, yellow. Those were things we were required to trace by the state. And so want to get everybody up to speed so they know how to actually answer questions of how our students are really doing. It's all in here. So long-winded report, but thank you.
Okay, next would be a Facilities Committee report, but
So the Facilities Committee met during the school board meeting of November 19th, 2019, and we just had 2.5 hours of meeting on it, so if you want to watch it, hit rewind.
Oh, Mike. Okay, great. All righty. Well, the Finance Committee met on November 12th, and at our meeting, we had several items that'll be on your consent agenda tonight, approval of our monthly reports, a number of items that are being disposed of. We accepted some donations that Ken mentioned earlier in his superintendent report, and we are approving a contract with a nursing, a company to contract for professional nursing services. In addition, we approved some paperwork. It's really more administrative than anything else as part of our PlanCon general obligation for some refinancing of bonds that we did earlier this year, speaking of saving money. We also had a discussion that is in our consent agenda about fund balance allocation, and we had conversations about how to deal with some building-based substitutes, nursing substitutes, as well as on our consent agenda, we have some additional assistant coaches for varsity basketball, both for boys and girls. And our next meeting for the Finance Committee will be December 10th. So then, moving forward, our next report is from the Policy Committee. Amy?
The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, November 12th, and we have 2 items on the agenda. The first one is Policy 113.1, Suspension and Expulsion. This is up for approval and adoption, a second reading and adoption. And the second item, 13.2, is Policy 113.1, Discipline of Students with Disabilities. This one is being brought forth for a second read for repeal. And then the third thing we discussed at our Policy Committee meeting was Policy 249, the anti-bullying policy. That did not make it forth to the board tonight because we want to go back and rework some of the language in there potentially, so that needs further discussion. In terms of when the policy committee will meet again, I noticed it's not on for December, so I think it's safe to say that January 21st will be the next time the policy committee meets, something? Most likely? Okay, so I just wanted to confirm that. Okay, thank you.
Now we'll have a report from GRCC.
We did not meet in November. Again, that looks like it's scheduled not until January.
Yes, some of our
14th,
committees,
right?
yes, some of our committees for December are a little bit in flux right now.
Right. Okay.
All right, so moving on to our consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. With the consent of all board members, they are therefore grouped and approval is given in one motion. And in the event a board member wants to discuss any item, the board president will move it to an appropriate place on the agenda. So are there any items to be pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
10.1.
Sarah's pulling 10.1.
14.1.
And 14.1. Okay, so I would entertain a motion. Are there any others? I would entertain a motion to approve items 10.2 through 14.3 minus 14.1. May I have
So
a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
Second.
Great. All those in favor? And the motion passes 6-0. Okay, Sarah, do you want to take us through?
Yeah, so 10.1 is the approval of the minutes from last month, and in section 10.4, it shows that the approval of those contracts was 9-0, but I recall, and I could be wrong, that Lydia actually voted against the survey approval last month. Did you change your mind, and I'm misremembering that? I know we pulled that out specifically because of the top topography surveys. You were saying you didn't want to.
No, you voted against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember which vote that was.
You voted against it. It was 8. I voted on my paperwork 8-1. No. I voted on my
We can
report.
check, we can check and then
Ken,
revise.
Just
no.
check on that.
Okay.
I voted on my actual
So you want to
agenda.
table the minutes?
No. I wrote it on my actual minutes from the meeting that night. I double-checked it. She voted against it.
Yeah.
So
I
we need-
agree with Susan Stern
Yeah.
that she did vote against, that Lydia did vote against it.
Yeah, so we just need to change that to,
Just to switch Lydia, change it to 9-1 and move Lydia's name to the nays.
okay, so that's a motion to amend the minutes.
So I have a motion to amend the minutes,
I
sorry.
need a second.
So moved. Second.
And all
Whatever.
those in favor? So the motion to approve 10.1 as amended by Ms. Dunn passes 6-0. And then Lydia, you took us through, you pulled 14.1.
Yeah, I just want to make note. I'm very sad to notice that Dr. Daniel Kane has tendered his resignation. And I just think people need to be aware of how much he contributed to student wellness in this district. He was here on the forefront of an effort to be proactive about student mental health and not be reactive and, kind of in a crisis mode. And he is the top of the field in helping students and looking at that. And so I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Kane, and we will miss him. I make a motion that we pass 14.1.
Second? Great. All those in favor? And the motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay, so then we're going to be moving on to our... Then we're going to be moving on to our committee reports. Do we have a report from the DCCC?
We do. So we had our liaison committee meeting on October 30th, immediately following the Delaware County Community College Annual School Board's Appreciation Dinner. At our liaison committee meeting, we received an update on their plans for their new proposed campus in the Upper Darby area. If I have this correct, it will be a $50 million project. And I believe they will be asking the sponsoring districts for a 1% increase in our portion of the budget. We also discussed the extension of their strategic plan for 2019 through 2022. We talked about new and enhanced student support services at the college. And we will be foregoing our typical January liaison meeting, so there will only be one other meeting of the liaison committee this year, which will be on April 1st.
Okay, so for Delaware County Intermediate Unit, Mr. Madden is not here, so there'll be no report. Federal Relations Network?
No report.
Okay. Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council, Ms. Goldman?
We did not meet in November.
Okay, so no report. PSBA, Dr. Babson.
Okay, so there's a couple of developments happening right now that PSBA is advocating for. Just for information, you know, core activity of PSBA is advocacy for public education at the State House, and PSBA has just announced strong opposition to PA House Bill 1800, sponsored by Representative Turzai from the Pittsburgh area, which establishes a voucher program for students in the Harrisburg School District. And this sets a precedent for expansion in other districts. So PSBA calls it, quote, another push to privatize education in Pennsylvania. And it is being met with widespread opposition by public education professionals across the state and including in Delaware County. So I just wanted to update you on that. There's one additional legislative development that PSBA has strongly advocated for, and this is something that is extremely important both statewide and nationally, which is teacher evaluation. And PSBA has strongly advocated for a pair of companion reform bills, Senate Bill 751 and House Bill 1607, that aim to improve PA classroom evaluation for educators. Currently under 2012 Act 82, 50% of teacher evaluation is based on observational data, and the other 50% is based on student performance data. And so the proposed legislation would shift this to 70% observational data and 30% student performance data. And this would include a provision for monitoring and evaluation of progress of the system over a 5-year period and allow for local tailoring of rating tools for local concerns. So now there are some things that are in the bill that PSBA is not in favor of, but this could be hugely important not only for PA but on a national level. So just those two items.
Thank you. Parks and Rec Board, is it going to be, okay, Dr. Babson.
I drew the short straw on that one. All right, so Parks and Rec. We did have an eventful meeting last Thursday, discussed a number of things. One thing that we did discuss of importance to discussions that we've been having here relate to Sulpizio Gym, and we did discuss our efforts to repair aspects of the gym to make it accessible for immediate use. And I was going to thank Mark Brooks, but he's left the building, wise man. But I just wanted to relay a special thanks to Mark for his efforts in that regard, for that effort. Okay, other news, there was another development in Parks and Rec. Veterans Park on Lancaster Avenue has been renamed Veterans and First Responders Park. There was a development at the Board of Commissioners meeting last night about this. Some pretty hefty donations, one from the state, another from Penn Medicine, and the gifts will be used to support park improvement, work in conjunction with local veterans groups. We were updated, Sarah and I were updated on progress being made to improvements at Emlyn Tunnel, Beau Connor, and Warren Philippone Parks. And we briefly discussed some interest in memorializing Peter Sampson somehow in our Parks and Rec system. So those were all issues on our agenda. So we're going to have another meeting on December the 12th, or the Thursday, December the 12th at 6:30 here in this building on the second floor.
Great, thank you. Radnor Educational Foundation and Radnor Alumni Council. Mr. Miller?
Okay, so this is the news for November of 2019 for the Radnor Educational Foundation. I have none. They did not
Good
provide me with an
morning,
update.
Vietnam.
Yes, exactly. They did not provide me with a report this month, but I do know that it is their 25th anniversary and that there are plenty of events going on this year, and the REF will inform the next board liaison. So they will inform you about that. Please stay tuned to their website for any information. And as always, for the last 4 years, I have no report from the Alumni Council.
Okay, Radnor High School Scholarship Fund, I see Ms. Bohnenberger has left, but I am going to put a little plug in, because you probably received in your mail in the last few days the campaign. So this is a really important organization that supports our high school seniors. I think they gave out 24 or 26 scholarships last year. And so if you got it in your mail and could please consider donating and donating generously, this is a really, this money makes a real difference for some kids trying to cover the cost of their 4 years of education. So that's my plug, because I was their liaison for a long time and I really like them. Radnor Page, Ms. Dunn.
I have checked in with Radnor Page, and they have explained there is no report this month.
And Radnor Committee for Special Education, Mr. Madden is not here, so we're going to say no report. And with that, do we have any new business? Okay, and our board announcements, let's see, on Tuesday, December 3rd at 7 p.m., we will be having our reorganization meeting where we'll be swearing in our new board members and electing our new board officers for next year. That meeting will be in the administration building, the ground floor conference room at the school district building. We will be having reception at 6:30 for family and friends if you care to bring them along at 6:30. And these are all tentative meetings, but we will be having committee meetings beginning at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, December 3rd. We'll refine that exact 10th, I'm sorry. We'll refine that schedule as soon as we can. And then our regular business meeting will be here December 17th in the Radnor Township Building in the Radnor Shire Room at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, December 17th. And with that, do we have any new public comment? Okay. Citizens are encouraged to address the board at this time to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before the board. We respectfully ask that speakers avoid redundancy if possible and limit your comments to issues for which there was not previous opportunity to offer remarks. If you haven't done so, please put your name on the sign-in sheet at the back of the room. And if you could kindly limit your comments to not more than 4 minutes. Welcome, Mr. Moore.
Thank you. Bradley Moore, Hickory Lane, Rosemont. Thank you, Mrs. Stern, for talking about the Radnor High School Scholarship Fund. Mrs. Bohnenberger had also intended to say that the Breakfast with Santa event will be on December 14th at the middle school. Information on that is available on the Radnor High School Scholarship Fund website, and we hope members of the community will attend with their children and enjoy the festivities.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. That was the first event you went to when you came on board 3 years ago. That was the first event that you came to.
I technically wasn't on board.
I know, but
when I
you
came
were.
to the no, but that was the very first.
I remember.
Radnor.
You were a big hit. You were. Welcome, Dr. Winters. Sorry. Go ahead.
Roberta Winters, I just would like to again thank the hard work of the committee who's been working on the facilities at the high school and the infrastructure that's related. I would just like to note that there are differences today than there were when we renovated the high school, and one of those is Act 1 index. And I would hope that, in looking at the future and looking at things in addition to the challenges with the permitting and the approvals, we don't shortchange other programs as we look to the long haul with an Act 1 index, particularly when we cannot see the economic future ahead. And I'm also pleased that you're looking at all the facilities within the township, because I know there are still portable classrooms in this building that are over 50 years old, and they were only built for short-term use, and students are still being housed within them. The other thing that I shared with Mr. Brooks today is I've noted, because I'm involved in many other aspects of world, is that there's a big problem right now evolving with the disposal of turf fields because of problems with plastic recycling and so forth. And it's getting to be a big problem. So that might be something that you might, when you look at bidding, to consider how you're going to dispose of that turf field. Finally, I would like to suggest to Mr. Batchelor, who does so many things so very well, if you would please, when you speak to the donations provided by different groups, if you would state them orally, because the slide is really not readable to the public and not everybody is going to have an agenda in front of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winters. Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Thank you. We're adjourned.